Chapter 737. Unbeknownst when, the thick clouds had rolled over the mountains in the northwest direction, looming over the surface of the sea. It was as if a great army was pressing down on the border. But in the blink of an eye, it turned into rags riddled with holes. It could not contain the abundant water vapor above the clouds, causing them to pour down in large amounts, forming an overwhelming downpour. It also enveloped the entire cruise terminal in a misty mist. Luo Nan yawned. All right, the traditional event of waving goodbye is over. Moya glared at him. It's not the first voyage. Where did all this nonsense come from? Both of them were right. Even though there was an enclosed viewing platform at the pier, no one on the cruise ship would be in the mood to perform a sailing ceremony in the pouring rain. It was 12:15 in the afternoon, and Moya had spent a lot of time going through the formalities. At this time, she had just finished checking her luggage and was waiting to board the ship. Her pace suddenly slowed down. Since it was a working day, Luo Shuqing was the only one who came along, aside from Mrs. Luo Shuqing, who took a special leave of absence to accompany her. Furthermore, most of his attention was still focused on flipping through the bodyguard information uploaded by the Psychic Wave Network and making his final decision. Don't worry about the details. It doesn't make a difference whether it's 2 or 3. Wild Jujube was a female, so she could follow the boat here. Because God needed to equip himself to clear the level, he could fly directly to Ban City. Add in cat eyes, the radar meat shield, and the firepower support. It'll be perfect. We'll do as you say. That wild Jujube is already at the dock, right? Okay, I see her. Luo Nan gave a slight nod to the muscular and beautiful woman who had just gotten up from the waiting area 30 meters away. He recognized the deep and reserved aura on her body. It could be said that he was acquainted with her, and he established a communication link with her. Wild Jujube was indeed a professional. He was already in the zone, quietly approaching and entering his work position. Of course, he still had to inform Moya about this, but he could only do so after they arrived at Sakura City. Did you see someone familiar? Mrs. Luo Shuqing turned her head to talk to Luo Nan. She saw Luo Nan's gaze shift, so she asked in passing. Luo Nan was just about to deny it when a familiar silhouette really did appear in his field of vision. Moreover, the silhouette was walking straight in his direction, even raising his hand in greeting. Luo Nan subconsciously looked at the bodyguard's information. He scanned the entire list, but he was still stupefied. This person isn't here. Aunt Qing, Moya, the woman who came over, took the initiative to greet him. She was tall and wore a short shirt and trousers just like Moya. However, she wore a thick long-sleeved shirt inside and a wide-brimmed hat on her head. She looked like a veteran backpacker who could travel to the wilderness at any time. Before Luo Nan could respond, Luo Shuqing laughed to the side. Tang Yi, you haven't been home much these past few years. That's right, Aunt Qing. It's because I'm running around with my teacher. This time, you guys have to take care of each other. Don't worry, Aunt Qing. Luo Nan made a deep self-reflection as he looked at the 3 people chatting and laughing. Was I too much of a homebody these past few years? But right now, the more crucial question was, when did Tang Yi and Peony, his former mission partners, return from Spring City? Why did he suddenly appear at the pier of the cruise ship? Moreover, he seemed to be very familiar with Moya and Luo Shuqing. Let me go through the details. Luo Nan vaguely found a few verifiable clues from the disorderly events, but before he had time to organize them, the bodyguard Wild Jujube had already reported in a low voice, Mr. Luo, this person is Miss Moya's roommate on the ship. He has already passed the risk assessment. Is there a problem? There might not be a problem, but even the society had overlooked an insider under their noses. Her Majesty Empress Wu's capable right-hand man really wasn't easy to deal with. It's nothing. He's an acquaintance. Luo Nan decided to go back and communicate with Her Majesty Empress Wu. Right now, it was more urgent to communicate with Tang Yi herself. He took a deep breath and cast his gaze, drawing Tang Yi's attention. President Tang, there's something I want to consult you about. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was very surprised. Little Nan and Tang, you know each other? Luo Nan grinned. Yeah. She's his direct superior. Tang Yi smiled. Luo Nan joined the Mystic Arts Research Society at school. I'm an old member there. Due to some personnel changes recently, I temporarily took over the position of president. Of course, it's just in name. Oh, that's quite a coincidence. It's all thanks to this. There's something I want to consult President Tang about. Just call me Big Sister. You don't need to be an outsider. Tang Yi smiled as she took advantage of Luo Nan, but she cooperated with him and walked to the side. Luo Nan adjusted his breathing and decided to cut off all the branches and leaves. He got straight to the point. Well, let's talk about complicated relationships later. Let me confirm something first. Peony, you don't have any missions on hand, right? I've been on a business trip in Spring City for half a year. Whether it's my instructor or my boss, it's reasonable for them to give me some time off. Luo Nan stared at her. It's fine as long as you're not on a business trip. No matter what, we're partners. You and my sister are best friends, so there are some things I don't need to say. Relax. If there really is a mission, I won't let Moya get caught up in this maelstrom. But I heard that you've been plagued with troubles recently. You're in debt, and you've implicated Moya. You're still under pressure right now. What? You're not happy to have a free bodyguard delivered to your doorstep? The news spread that fast. Of course. Zhang Yingying ran to the big boss's office. She wanted to pay for the matter with the horned demon, but she was thrown out. Huh? I'm just joking. Don't feel burdened. Tang Yi revealed a mysterious smile. Then she changed the topic. But there's one more thing. Shouldn't you think about it carefully? What is it? Right now the word in the society is that you're going to take a break from school soon, right? That's right. In theory, a suspended member doesn't have the qualifications to occupy the society's public assets. Right now, there are quite a few people who are itching for a fight over your laboratory on the third floor beneath Gear on the North Bank. They want to seize the opportunity to take it back. Hey. I've had a lot of worries lately. Partner, can't you share some of my worries? I said it before. I'm just a nominal president. I'm able to get to this position because I'm quite qualified. Also, I hold shares of the LCRF. Hold on. Why is it the LCRF? The LCRF was the Life Cycle Research Fund. From Luo Nan's understanding, it was basically an amalgamation of the interests of various large capitals, military, and political powers. To put it in a harsher way, it was built upon the delusion of a group of old men intent on living forever. Why was Her Majesty Empress Wu getting involved? It's because the big boss has a stake there. In order to show respect, they basically seek the boss' opinion on every investment in Xia City and give him a seat on the board of directors. You can go ask Yingying. She's a board member of many companies, even though she practically never goes there. It's that cool. This is respect. Let's not talk about the three giants of Xia City. Old man Yu aside, President Ouyang has a large number of technology companies fighting to give him shares. Otherwise, where would the expenses of researching the psychic wave network come from? If he wanted to update his equipment right now, all he needed to do was leak the news and everyone, including Quantum Corporation, would come crying and shouting for supplies. Do you believe it? I believe it. You're quite respected right now. Big Sis has bodyguards when she goes out. She even comes up to help for free. These are extraordinary times. Luo Nan's lips twitched. He didn't believe this to be a good thing. And the respect he hoped for wasn't limited to just this. Enemies like President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu would come rushing to express their goodwill. Admittedly, this was because of the unscrupulous nature of capital. But weren't Luo Nan's greatest opponents also unscrupulous fellows? You're looking forward to it. Aha. Luo Nan responded straightforwardly, I don't know when I'll be like Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang. Luo Nan was currently experimenting in this area. He didn't know what kind of results his design would have in the end. Perhaps true respect would only come after he became an extraordinary. It was useless to think about these things. He just needed to do it bit by bit. At this time, his aunt called out from afar, What are you guys chatting about for so long? Don't delay Sister Tang Yi and the others from boarding the ship. Yeah. It's just some club matters. Don't you want to take a break from school? Luo Nan quickly gave Tang Yi a meaningful glance, but he was too busy giving her a meaningful glance. He spoke too quickly and touched upon Mrs. Luo Shuqing's reverse scale. He received a death glare and choked for a moment. It took him great effort to continue, I won't be using that laboratory much in the future, so I need to reorganize it. I need to divide it into areas for the club to take over. Sigh. A lot of the equipment is sponsored by the school and investors. There are also some raw materials and the like. There are a lot of accounts that need to be dealt with just the handover. It's impossible to finish it in a day or two. In the end, Mrs. Luo Shuqing favored her nephew the most. From her perspective, it didn't matter how mischievous Luo Nan was in his studies or how dangerous the circle he entered was. Luo Nan's painstaking effort was the reason why the laboratory was able to attract so many investments. It would be too much of a pity if it were to be disturbed. She immediately opened her mouth to help Tang Yi. Regarding the matter of the laboratory, can you be a bit more flexible in terms of time? It's not that easy to handle the procedures for taking a break from school. Tang Yi smiled. She didn't even glance at Luo Nan. She found the feeling of being a partner, don't worry Aunt Qing. I still have a bit of influence in the club. Luo Nan isn't an outsider. I'll do my best to relax my time. Actually, the time I've been away on vacation is pretty good. It'll take half a month to go back and forth. I'll mention it to the club right now. Luo Nan just needs to bury himself in organizing. Even if the club has objections, they'll have to wait for me to return. When the time comes, I might be able to buy a bit of time. What do you think? Luo Nan gave Tang Yi a big thumbs up in his mind. She really deserved to be called the best partner. These few short sentences had bought him a lot of free time. Luo Nan immediately straightened his body and spoke in a loud voice, There's no need for Sister Tang Yi to make things difficult for me. I'll make the best use of my time to sort things out. I'll strive to finish everything before you return. So he had to eat and live in the laboratory. Occasionally, he would have to go out and negotiate with people. In this case, he would show his face once every 3 to 5 days and disappear for the rest of the time. Wasn't that very normal? Right now, the biggest problem had been solved. Moya cast her gaze over to Luo Nan and Tang Yi's face. She was quite amused. Luo Nan curled his lips. You've gone through so much trouble. What are you probing for? Moya glared back at him. She actually blinked and lowered her head to look at her watch, it's almost 1 o'clock. We've requested to board the ship an hour earlier. If you keep being long-winded, we'll probably have to jump onto the ship. Luo Shuqing glared back at her, but she turned to reveal a smile at Tang Yi. Luo Shuqing could see that her impression of Tang Yi was quite good. Of course, there was also the factor of Luo Nan, Tang Yi, since you're going to travel, you should properly relax. Take care of each other with Moya. When you come back, come to our house more often to play. Okay, Aunt Qing. I'll urge Moya to report that she's safe and sound every day. Tang Yi responded calmly. She nodded her head in farewell, then, Aunt Qing, Junior Luo, I'll see you later. The two great beauties, both over 180 centimeters in height, didn't say anything more. They turned around and walked toward the boarding gate. Their tall and slender figures were simply like models walking the streets. They even talked about some topic in the middle of the conversation. Luo Nan could see them look at each other and laugh loudly. They were both candid and lively. It was indeed pleasing to the eye, causing the surrounding men to frequently turn their heads. Luo Nan scratched his head. He felt a bit baffled, but he quickly shifted his attention. His gaze swept past Wild Jujube, who was following behind Emoya. It also passed through the transparent walls of the boarding hall and the misty rain. It swept past Cat Eyes, who had already boarded the ship on the 5th deck. Luo Nan's mental sensing network confirmed that there were no suspicious characters among the 5,000 to 6,000 people on the entire cruise ship. He could relax for the time being. At the very least, he could wholeheartedly do his own things during these 5 days on the sea. He could also make preparations for the more troublesome situation that would follow. There was a time difference of an hour. Night had already fallen in Ban City. The wind and rain on the other side of the ocean didn't stir up the slightest ripple here. Inlo boarded North Mountain Lake. It was said that several decades ago, this was the location of the ancient capital of the island nation. The ancient capital was originally built next to a mountain. During the Third World War, the capital was destroyed by both the war and the earthquake. More than half of it was submerged by the silt of the lake water that gushed out from the deep mountains 100 kilometers away. Then the seawater flowed back, forming a brand new swamp zone that spanned an area of several hundred square kilometers. Thus, the blue sea turned into mulberry fields. The mountain peaks of this region became islands, scattered across the surface of the lake. It was said that when the weather was good, one could overlook the lake from the island. One could even see the ruins of the lake's bottom. Inlo didn't come here to admire the scenery. She chose this place because it was the most convenient area for her to do things in the northern end of Ban City. She had arrived in Ban City 2 days ago. Most of the dozens of hours had been spent here. Now that the project was finally completed, all the machinery and personnel had left the site in advance. As far as her eyes could see, there were almost no particularly obvious changes. The buried metal pile foundation and frame structure were integrated with the surrounding rocks and vegetation. It couldn't be said to be ingenious, but it was solid and hidden enough. She looked down at her watch. It was almost time. Everything had been done according to that gentleman's request. What would happen next? Before she could finish her thought, there was a buzzing sound in the void. The air trembled clearly, as if it was resonating with her body. A clear numbness was transmitted from her lips and cheeks to her internal organs. An invisible pressure pushed her back 2 steps. A whirlwind appeared on the flat ground in front of her. Dust and grass flew everywhere, obscuring her vision. She wanted to get closer to take a closer look, but the sudden appearance of lightning and fire formed a barrier, blocking her way. She was shocked. She instinctively stood up straight, looked down, and stood still. All the strange sounds and phenomena ended after 10 seconds. What replaced them was the clear sound of breathing. Inlu was stunned. She couldn't help but look up. She saw a 16 or 17-year-old youth dressed in casual clothes. He looked like a tourist who had come to play. He looked all around, curiously sizing up the rippling surface of the water. So this is Ban City. Inlu recognized this person. He looked almost the same as when they first met half a year ago. However, Inlu had long since lost the mentality she had at Frost River Reality. She only bowed deeply to the youth in front of her. Chapter 738. Luo Nan didn't speak. Inlu bowed and didn't get up, just like a statue. She really needed some buffer time. Even though she had already guessed it, Inlu still needed to digest Luo Nan's method of traversing 2,000 kilometers of space to appear before her eyes. Only then was she able to calm her surging mind. Of course, there were spatial shifting techniques in the extraordinary domain. There were at least 10 mental extraordinaries who were proficient in this path. One of them was the veteran Deputy Secretary General of the Ability User Society, Gong Qi. However, the shifting techniques of these people were built on the foundation of pure soul bodies. It was similar to the concept of astral travel in classical Eastern metaphysics. Luo Nan relied on a few metal foundations that couldn't be seen to realize his fleshly body shifting. Regardless of how it was realized in theory or technology, the energy consumption of material shifting alone was probably an astronomical figure. Enlil used the configuration of the Blood Soul Temple to sense the current state of the abyss area. Turbulent currents were indeed swirling and turbulent. The chaotic storm was clearly in a state of interference. However, it was far too conservative compared to the estimated scale. The easiest logic to understand was that the same effect consumed less energy, the higher the technique. This sort of supernatural method was not as straightforward as the tyrannical storm, but the more she thought about it, the more inconceivable it became. How could Luo Nan, who could wander tens of thousands of kilometers at will and easily shift his fleshly body, be summarized by the title of genius theorist of the mental side? It must be known that omnipotence was omnipotence in a certain sense. Enlil didn't expect that she would think so much during the time she was bowing. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to her at all. She raised her head in astonishment and saw Luo Nan operate with his fingers. He had just finished sketching in the air when he turned to smile at her. Wait a bit. Ripples rippled through the air as soon as he finished speaking. A metal chest half the height of a person bounced out from the depths of the dark night and fell with a whoosh. Luo Nan's soul strength interfered slightly, allowing this big fellow to land steadily on the grassy gravel-covered ground. Inside the chest was a custom-made exoskeleton equipment. It was Luo Nan's next practice tool. Exoskeleton equipment was expensive, and Luo Nan was currently deep in debt. He had to be careful no matter what. Enlil was already numb to Luo Nan's endless methods. She was too lazy to think about the technology and ability support behind this. She just did her duty and walked forward quickly, preparing to take over. Luo Nan shook his head. I'll just hold it. He still looked like a thin and weak youth, and his combat skills were trash in the eyes of professionals like Gym Master Xiao and Xue Lei. However, after a long period of mutual interference and tempering of the God will and body wheel, there were even more qualitative changes after the awakening. In terms of physique, it was definitely at the inhuman level. The 200-kilogram metal box was easy to carry with one hand. Compared to who would carry the box, he was more concerned about the follow-up arrangements. This is a deserted island, right? Where are we going next? There's a boat on the shore, on the right. Sir, aren't you going to deal with it? Enlil was a bit surprised to see Luo Nan leave with the box. Luo Nan was even more baffled. Handle what? This is a framework that can be used for spatial jumps. It's not like there's no one around. Just now, when you came over, there was quite a commotion in the abyss area. If someone followed you here and discovered the setup here, took it away or destroyed it, Luo Nan blinked his eyes. Does it take a lot of effort for you to buy these things? No, it's very simple to order, and there are backups. Then just leave it here. The materials aren't as expensive as labor. Luo Nan explained a few things in passing. You said that this is just a framework. It's nothing more than a temporary airdrop station. It's not a permanent building. The truly useful configuration requires the turbulent interference of the abyss area to be temporarily constructed. The rest of the stuff can be messed around with however you want. Strength was the capital to be willful. Enlil was a bit emotional. She could tell that Luo Nan didn't want to waste energy on this sort of thing, so she didn't say anything more. Then she clasped her hands around her abdomen, bowed once more, and invited Luo Nan to head to the shore of the island to board the boat. Luo Nan walked about 200 to 300 steps before he saw a white yacht anchored on the shore. It was quite conspicuous under the curtain of night. According to your instructions, we need to maneuver around North Mountain Lake. The corresponding residence is a bit hard to grasp. So, I made the decision on my own and chose this high-speed yacht. If we use it as a habitat, we'll give up some of the comfort, and our mobility and flexibility will increase by quite a bit. Of course, if you're more accustomed to living on land, we can also stay near the shore of the lake. No, this is a good idea. Luo Nan's eyes really lit up when he saw this yacht. It was for no other reason than that the somewhat vague details of the plan suddenly became clear. It could be considered an unexpected pleasant surprise. Yin Li's mind relaxed. Just Luo Nan's attitude alone meant that the painful process of racking her brains these past 2 days wasn't in vain. Her mind relaxed, but she still maintained a respectful and restrained expression on her face. She just invited Luo Nan to board the yacht from the rear deck and introduced the basic situation of the yacht to Luo Nan at the right time. The yacht's name is Ray. It's Fati Corporation's Pioneer-class motorboat. It has a classic 3-story structure and its entire body is made of carbon fiber. The boat's length is 24 meters, and it's equipped with a solid fuel and electric dual-drive engine. Its top speed can reach 50 knots, and its steering performance is superior. Since Luo Nan was carrying heavy luggage, Yin Lu first guided him to the residential area of the lower deck to settle him down. This place is completely isolated from the crew cabin. It can guarantee confidentiality and safety. The central area is the master's room. It's the same width as the boat. The living conditions are acceptable. Luo Nan arrived at the master's room of the yacht and put down the heavy metal box. His gaze and mental senses swept over at the same time. What entered his eyes was the luxurious decorations of the cabin. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was the large bed in the middle. It was big enough for 3 or 4 people to lie side by side. There were portholes on both sides that could see the view. There was an office area, a movie area, a restroom, a shower room, and a walk-in wardrobe. It could only be said that the rich were okay. Poor ghosts like them had no way of understanding them. Yin Lu maintained a smile on her face. She let Luo Nan look at the other door outside the cabin. For the sake of confidentiality, I haven't arranged any service personnel in the residential area. However, I'm in the attendant room to the left of the exit. Oh, it's very close. Yin Lu tilted her head slightly. For the sake of convenience, the 2 rooms are connected. If you have any urgent matters that you need me to do, you can find me by pushing open the secret door in the office area. Huh? Yin Li's eyelids drooped. Her voice was gentle and calm. The secret door is a one-way door. It can only be opened from the master's room. Please be at ease with its safety. The atmosphere turned strange. Luo Nan was dazed for a moment. Then he frowned. There's no need to live so closely. Isn't there another room at the bow? I think it's quite spacious. Yin Li's eyebrows were still drooped. That's a VIP room. Mr. Luo, don't you have your cousin in Ban City? If the situation changes, we might need to move her over here. Or if there are other honored guests staying here, it would be quite awkward to adjust the room. What use is this yacht when we need to move Moya? Besides, where would there be other honored guests? The madam said that if Mr. Luo feels that the situation in Ban City is complicated, she can come over at any time to share Mr. Luo's worries. Luo Nan was silent for a moment. His gaze swept over Yin Li's body. Then he nodded. We'll talk about it later. You continue to introduce the situation on the ship. He didn't stay in the master's room any longer. He walked out first. Yin Lu followed 2 steps behind him. The crew members are all veteran mad believers of the order. They are all retired military personnel. Their speedboat driving and water operations are all first class. Luo Nan grunted. They really are mad believers. Yin Lu raised her eyes and shot a quick glance. Then she immediately lowered her head. She was unable to verify Luo Nan's firm judgment. Or perhaps it was better to say that she didn't dare to verify Luo Nan's judgment. In any case, they could be considered to have settled down now. The living area of the lower deck, excluding the crew's cabins, actually had 3 cabins here. The master's room, the VIP guest room, and the attendant room. A small living room was arranged between these 3 cabins. There was a set of sofas here, and there was a small and exquisite bar counter on the opposite side. The wine rack behind it was filled with all sorts of alcohol. Luo Nan didn't recognize the brand, but he thought that the value of the alcohol placed here must be considerable. Indeed, if there was a professional service staff here, the quality of life on the yacht would soar beyond his imagination. Of course, the reality wasn't bad either. Luo Nan let out a breath and sat on the sofa. He leaned his upper body back, feeling the sofa's soft touch. He felt the northern mountain lake area, Xia City, and even the surrounding areas that were completely different. His attention soon returned to a more meaningful level of information that involved the extraordinary plane. The surrounding aura is very exuberant. Luo Nan chose a more appropriate word. Within his sensing network, the surface of the water, the underwater, the island, and even the sky were all exuberant with life. Or perhaps it could be said that it was exuberant a bit too much. Northern Mountain Lake was once the most active area for mutants in the surrounding areas of Ban City. It was also one of the areas with the most abundant populations. Even though the military conducts a large-scale sweep every year, they can only suppress the intensity of the mutants here. Ban City is already the only place in the surrounding seas that is suitable for a large metropolitan area. Building a city here is just a choice made after having no other choice. Yin Lu stood ramrod straight at the bottom of the stairs leading from the master's room to the small living room. She introduced softly. "Sit down and talk." Luo Nan just wanted Yin Li's help. He didn't want her to be a slave, so he indicated for her to sit down. Yin Lu bowed in thanks, but she first dimmed the lights in the small living room. She opened up the virtual work area and projected the relevant information. Only then did she lightly lift the hem of her windbreaker and sit on the edge of the sofa. Luo Nan's gaze followed Yin Li's movements by some strange coincidence. He watched as her stocking-wrapped long legs neatly drew together and then slanted outwards. They contrasted with the ankle-high heels of her ankle boots, revealing a particularly slender and perfectly round line. They emitted a faint blue light under the illumination of the luster. So it was blue. Luo Nan's mind leaped with thoughts that had nothing to do with the established goal. His eyelids also jumped. It was as if Yin Lu was completely unaware of it. She just adjusted the information in the projection area and explained, "I have previously reported to you about the matter of searching for the target. Right now, we have already locked onto 2 areas surrounding Northern Mountain Lake." Chapter 739. It was his first time on a luxurious yacht like the Ray. It would be too pretentious of him not to go to the top deck to enjoy the breeze and experience the feeling of steering the boat, riding the wind and breaking the waves. Luo Nan wasn't a pretentious person, so he agreed to Yin Li's casual suggestion after locking onto their next destination. Thus, the two of them were now on the top deck. The constant temperature system in the room was replaced by the cool and refreshing night wind. Between the spacious water and sky, one's mood would always be a bit different than in a secret room. There was still a certain distance between them and their designated destination. Even though this distance was meaningless to Luo Nan had to consider the detailed requirements of observing and doing things. So Luo Nan let it go for now. He temporarily transformed into a tourist who had just arrived at this place. Under Yin Li's guidance, he opened up the pilot's seat on the top deck. He didn't pay attention to small details like driving without a license. Instead, he began a continuous Z-shaped taxiing journey that shocked the ordinary crew members. Luckily, Luo Nan still had some self-awareness. He could sense the chaotic emotions of the crew members, so he just experienced a bit more before withdrawing. He returned to the sunlit area behind the pilot's seat and tasted the low-alcohol beverage Yin Lu had concocted. The refreshing taste of the beverage and the refreshing feeling of the night wind interweaved together. It was indeed very enjoyable. On the relatively spacious top deck, Yin Lu still followed her habit of sitting in the living area's small living room. She sat right next to Luo Nan. The night wind blew her beautiful hair, and strands of her hair would occasionally touch Luo Nan's cheek. It was so itchy that he wanted to scratch it with his hand. Yin Lu noticed this detail and said, "Sorry." She gathered her hair a bit and adjusted her position, sitting a bit further away. Although it was said to be far away, it was actually limited. Plus, the angle was staggered, making it easier for Luo Nan to clearly see her face and the outline of her figure. Luo Nan's gaze naturally swept over. Speaking of which, this was the first time he seriously sized up Yin Lu today. On the deserted island, he only managed to recognize her face and ignored everything else. In the living room, he just stared at her stockings. It was only now that Luo Nan discovered that Ian Lee's clothes didn't quite match his impression of the capable manager of Frost River Reality and the deputy first ablatum of the Blood Flame Order. She put on makeup, and the shape of her face and eyebrows became even more exquisite. The dark blue pinstripe windbreaker had a very formal style. The front was wide open, and it naturally revealed the tight-fitting light-colored high-collared shirt. Overall, it was a very intellectual style. However, further down, there was a short skirt that was almost hidden under the hem of the trench coat. Together with the long legs wrapped in stockings and the high-heeled boots, it had the magical effect of attracting the attention of men. Luo Nan was an example. Actually, Luo Nan was a complete layman when it came to women's clothing. He just felt that Yin Luo was a very exquisite woman who would pay attention to the details. It was just like the stockings that wrapped around his legs. At first, he thought it was just ordinary black silk, but he didn't expect that under the illumination of the light, there would be an additional layer of color and luster. Yin Luo was such a person. She was exquisite, paid attention to the quality of life, and knew how to enjoy life. However, he lacked the ability to focus on cultivation without any distractions. This was probably the main reason why Mrs. Halder had never treated her as a true successor to be groomed. Of course, Mrs. Halder herself didn't care that much about the continuation of the Blood Flame Order. She just used the Blood Flame Order, especially the Blood Soul Temple's configuration, as a furnace for smelting a unique core. Luo Nan was certain that he wouldn't hand over important matters that concerned his life to Yin Luo. This had nothing to do with being close or not. It was just that he knew how to appoint people. However, if Yin Luo were to arrange some routine and normal matters, she would do it extremely well. Though the upper limit was relatively low, Yin Luo was able to play with flowers within a limited space. It was said that before she entered the circle, she was once Mrs. Halder's secretary. A personal secretary. The feeling of being a working secretary or a confidential secretary like Sister Yueyin was completely different. TSK, what am I thinking now? Luo Nan's thoughts touched He Yueyin, and he suddenly came to a realization. It had only been half an hour since he arrived in Ban City, but he had spent a lot more brain power and time on this woman before his eyes than on the scheduled business. Luo Nan, oh Luo Nan. You've just stepped onto the yacht, and you've already degenerated into a rotten fellow? It's done. Luo Nan suddenly clapped his hands. Mr. It was unknown when, but Yin Li's way of addressing Luo Nan had already removed the surname from the front. This was also a subtle change in the details. Luo Nan didn't care about these details. He reorganized his thoughts and asked a question, the consumables I talked about 2 days ago, especially the matter of the energy center. How's it going? Was this a switch in the mask? Yin Lu still wasn't quite used to Luo Nan's jumpy emotions and thoughts, but she still displayed extremely high accomplishments in her field of expertise. She took a light breath and immediately opened up the virtual work area. She projected the corresponding information over. According to your request, Mr., a total of 12 tons of consumables have been purchased. This is the list. As for the energy center, we have prepared 2 alternative locations. They are both in the vicinity of North Mountain Lake. The projection area first displayed a satellite map of the Ban City area, as well as the important markings on it. Then, it displayed the information images of the 2 alternative locations. Point A, which is also the North Mountain Water Generating Station, is 300 kilometers away from the center of Ban City. It is approximately 70 kilometers northwest of your position when you arrived. It is the first batch of emergency infrastructure facilities after the war. It originally had a total installed capacity of 1.2 million kilowatts. It has a total of 4 units, large and small. However, it has basically been discontinued. Only a single 50,000 kilowatts unit is still in operation. It exists as a backup power station for the old power grid. There are still people here. There are no residential areas in the surroundings. The hydroelectric power station operates in an unmanned mode. There will be people coming over to maintain it every month, but it's just a routine matter. Basically, as long as war doesn't erupt and large-scale mutant invasions don't occur in Ban City, no one will care about it. Of course, system monitoring definitely exists. We need to get through certain joints. Luo Nan nodded. It would be much simpler to use the external neuron to deal with system monitoring. The projection area displayed the next set of images. As for Point B, it is located on North Mountain Lake's Claw Island. It is 20 kilometers away from your position when you arrived, Mr. The generator set there is a first-generation miniaturized field combat energy center. It is a complete superconducting generator set, powered by both wind and water. The capacity of this generator set is much lower, it is approximately 3,000 kilowatts. Claw Island was originally a monitoring point for mutants. It also served as a forward base for explorers, but it was captured by mutants once. The casualties were disastrous. Later, it changed hands many times, but accidents always occur. It seems that mutants care quite a bit about that place. They often go there, so the frequency of accidents is quite high. I'll take both of them. Huh. The straight line distance between Point A and Point B is only 40 kilometers. Both are relatively independent. One is used as an experimental base, while the other is used as a shooting range. It's quite perfect. Is that so? Lu subconsciously asked, but she quickly regained her composure. She bowed and expressed, since it's like this, I will immediately clean up the loose ends. You just need to sign a temporary rental agreement for Point B. As for Point A, you can use it right now. Luo Nan nodded. He had something to do tonight. He spoke again, there are also consumables. First transport half of each to Point A and some to Point B. There's no need for too much. Just 1/10 will do. Lu recorded at the same time. She knew how to check and fill in the gaps. Do we need to put some on the yacht as well? That's right. That's good. Luo Nan gave her a reminder. We need to prepare the subsequent purchases as well. The losses will be quite large. The so-called consumables were the ingredients needed for the biochemical reactor. Unfortunately, this was only the basic formula. The ingredients needed for the advanced formula were not complete. This led to the catalyzed electromagnetic muscle membrane structure having a low carrying capacity. The catalysis required a large amount of energy and nutrients, but once it was unleashed at full strength, the carrying capacity was extremely tight. The more this was the case, the more Luo Nan needed to utilize every second of his explosive period. Only then could he increase his chances of assassinating Gong Qi. This required a large amount of repetitive practice. According to his experience in Spring City, it required a large amount of electricity, high amounts of nutrients, and consumable base materials. It was easy to imagine that this was a giant beast that ate money. The pressure on logistics was far too great. This kind of practice could only be carried out in the metropolis and its surrounding areas. He would be the center of everyone's attention if he was in Xia City. He was far too eye-catching. Spring City was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough. D City's situation was complicated. Because of the so-called new plane, extraordinaries would pass through from time to time. In other words, Luo Nan could still give it a try in Ban City. Luo Nan wasn't picky about Li's methods. He wasn't stingy with his praise. You've done quite well. Mister, you flatter me. Lu bowed in greeting. She still maintained a cautious and restrained attitude. However, this restraint was built on a complex psychological foundation. It was like her exquisite makeup. Even though her foundation was excellent, it was unknown how much effort she had put in to achieve this level of beauty without batting an eyelid. It was precisely because it was complex that it brought about more real-time changes. It gave people the interest and pleasure to explore. Fuck, I'm thinking too much again. Luo Nan took a deep breath. He prepared to use the induction network to investigate the situation of the two bases. Yin Lu suddenly stood up at this time. The lower hem of her windbreaker covered more of the lines of her legs, but it seemed to expose more as it fluttered in the wind. Luo Nan, who was still sitting in his original position, subconsciously made a comparison. His consciousness shifted, and the voice beside his ear became a bit fuzzy. This lasted until Yin Lu spoke a second time. Mr. Yes? Up ahead is the Zhujiao Wei Gate. Only now did Luo Nan completely wake up. He stood up as well and stood by Yin Li's side. He looked down from high above, past the heavy mist, and looked toward the edge of the lake several kilometers away. Chapter 740. The reason why the camphor tree had its back to Luo Nan was because this camphor tree possessed an extremely human-like appearance. Its crown and branches were naturally shaped as it grew. Looking from afar, one didn't need too much imagination to be able to see an awe-inspiring appearance similar to that of an arhat or a heavenly king in a temple. Many years of growth had caused the main trunk of the camphor tree to diverge. It was like two thick legs standing upright on the ground. It also had an enormous, clearly defined head. That was the crown of its trunk. In addition, there was a cluster of well-developed side branches that extended over a dozen meters. It was like a thick arm that was stretched out horizontally. This arm was placed horizontally above the seemingly tranquil ripples of Beishan Lake. The lake water rippled slightly. It vibrated back and forth with the granite patterns of the breakwater that resembled a city wall. There were slight twists and turns, but it didn't cross over this horizontal extension of the thick arm. This is the Zhujiao Gate? Yes. During the Third World War, the earthquake caused the topography of the mountain to change. The flood from upstream poured down in torrents. Soon, it submerged the ancient capital and forced the other cities downstream. But due to topography, coincidence, and other reasons, the flood, which could have caused even greater destruction, stopped here and didn't advance any further. It formed an enormous dammed lake. Although there were many dangerous situations in the following decades, the lake water generally stopped behind this camphor tree. It didn't advance any further. The citizens of Osaka City believed that this tree was mystical, so they used the local folklore to name it Wei Gate. The general idea was that it was an imperial bodyguard that guarded the royal court. And it is rumored that the seed of this tree was transplanted from the sunken Saga county of Kyushu Island. In ancient times, Saga was called Saga, so it was called the Zhujiao Gate. Luo Nan already had a preliminary understanding of the concrete information through his own observations and the information provided by Yin Lu. But listening to Yin Lu narrate the rather mystical legend like she was telling a story was still a relaxing experience. Looking at the Zhujiao Gate now, it really did seem like a powerhouse with a thick and sturdy body. It exerted force with its arm horizontally, forcefully stopping the boundless water waves. And it had its back to the lake surface, disregarding all threats. It was extremely bold and powerful. It had a sense of beauty. Of course, it was impossible for the government of Osaka City to completely entrust the safety of the city to a camphor tree. According to the records, when the city of Ban was first established, the builders built a series of dams and other water conservancy projects behind this big tree, completely controlling the possibility of the North Mountain invading Hunan. The semi-abandoned hydroelectric power station that Luo Nan would soon be heading to was one of the results of that time. The designer of the water conservancy project must have taken into account the beliefs of the people. When building the dam, he left plenty of room for the camphor tree to grow. The divine tree didn't stand on ceremony either. Not only did its thick roots penetrate deep into the ground, a considerable portion of them also extended above the ground. Green moss covered the surface of the tree, giving it an ancient appearance. Yin Lu continued, actually, this tree isn't that old, only about 100 years old. However, its growth is very vigorous, and it's even larger than some 1,000-year-old trees. Logically speaking, there should be some abnormalities. It's just that the plant's mutation is relatively mild, and Osaka City's government didn't find any obvious problems after monitoring it for a long period of time, so they left. Luo Nan gazed into the distance and muttered, "The incense is quite exuberant." It was around 8 o'clock in the evening, the time when the citizens would go out and relax. Quite a few residents and tourists came before this camphor tree. According to the local custom, they would go before the tree, high-five, and put their palms together in respect. The stream of people under the tree maintained a relatively plentiful state. They came in an endless stream, and it really did look quite intimidating. Yinlu flipped through the information and applied what she had learned. The locals usually worship the gods in the morning, but according to legend, when the flood arrived behind the Zujia gate, night had fallen. Therefore, the people believe that the power of the Zujia gate is more abundant at night, and the worship is done after the sun has set. If it was daytime, there wouldn't be so many people. Luo Nan nodded slightly. He couldn't blame the citizens of Osaka City for offering large amounts of incense and faith. This camphor tree really did have a bit of spirituality. Its vitality was exuberant to the point that it was shocking. It was able to absorb large amounts of nutrients from the surrounding earth, the air, the water behind it, and even more distant regions. It was able to effectively distribute these nutrients to its roots and branches. At the same time, it was able to restrain itself, forming a healthy symbiotic relationship with its surroundings. This was already a realm that ordinary plants couldn't achieve. It was basically the truth to say that it was a plant-class mutant. In addition, there were even more special places. Right now, the yacht was very close to the dam. It couldn't go any closer, so it temporarily dropped the anchor and stayed on the water's surface. Luo Nan used his sight and mental senses to observe from this position. He was silent for a long time. Yinlu cooperatively stayed silent for a period of time. But a few minutes later, she saw that Luo Nan continued like this. She couldn't help but ask softly, "Mister, is there a direct relationship between this camphor tree and that person's tracks?" The so-called person was none other than Snake Tongue. Yin Li's initial goal in coming to Osaka City was to help Luo Nan search for traces of Snake Tongue's body. Snake Tongue was a famous curse master of the inner world. Last year, she went to Xia City in an out-of-body state to cooperate with headquarters in an operation to try and harm Luo Nan. Later, the operation failed, and many people saw Luo Nan use a secret technique to capture her. But no one knew whether she was imprisoned or killed. Therefore, Yinlu and Mrs. Halder weren't the least bit surprised that Luo Nan wanted to search for Snake Tongue's body. As for what Luo Nan was going to do with Snake Tongue's body, whether it was whipping corpses to vent his anger, threatening and torturing them, or using them as medicine, it was none of their business. Being able to consolidate and deepen their relationship with Luo Nan through these matters was the most important thing. Yinlu didn't just want to give Luo Nan a good impression through doing things. Before coming here, she and Mrs. Halder had devised quite a few plans on how to improve their relationship with Luo Nan. Over the next few days in Osaka City, she would verify each plan one by one to see which would produce better results. Judging from the situation just now, Luo Nan wasn't completely indifferent to some of her methods. He wasn't angry either. This was a good start, but what to do next to be just right was still a difficult problem that she had no confidence in. She had no choice but to try. Yinlu cast her gaze toward Luo Nan once more. Luo Nan was still looking at the camphor tree in the distance, as well as the figures moving under the camphor tree. He was extremely focused. Yinlu couldn't guess what sort of scene would appear in his eyes and mental senses, but it made her even more curious. Luo Nan was undoubtedly a mysterious and powerful person. But the deeper she understood, the more she understood that in a certain sense, this person was just a simple and even pure youth. Powerful strength, malicious intent surrounding him, endlessly pushing him through dangerous trials, special experiences during his childhood, good family education. All sorts of complex and contradictory conditions were mixed together to form Luo Nan's special personality that was close to having a split personality. To develop a relationship with such a person. Furthermore, she was in a lower position, so it wasn't easy for her to fawn over him. What's more, she could face a backlash at any time. Luo Nan's chaotic and ever-changing personality was like a set of rapidly rotating fan blades. They appeared to be one entity under the high-speed state, but they were lethal weapons capable of twisting off fingers in a direct confrontation. In fact, it was very likely that it would be her neck that was snapped. Just thinking about it, Yin Li's heartbeat sped up. But thinking about how she had to control a powerful spiritual expert beside her, it was tough for her. Luo Nan's murmur entered his ears while he was doing his best to harmonize his breathing. What a beauty. Are you talking about me? Yin Li's heart skipped a beat, but she soon realized that she had expressed the wrong feelings. This was because Luo Nan had been looking at the shore from beginning to end. His gaze pierced nearly a kilometer of the boundless curtain of night, locking onto a particular point amidst the stream of people coming and going under the camphor tree. Though Yin Luo was also an ability user and a spiritual expert, whether it was her gaze or the distance of her mental senses, they weren't enough to allow her to see the details of the lake shore. She could only indulge her thoughts and speculate. The youth before her really seemed to have reached the age where he was interested in the opposite sex. Luo Nan spoke again, this time to Yin Luo. Can the boat dock? Yin Luo quickly came back to her senses and responded, there are no docks nearby, but the boat is equipped with fishing boats. We can bypass the breakwater in front and disembark from the eastern region. Really? That's great. Our luck isn't bad. Luo Nan no longer lingered on the scene on the shore after he finished speaking. He turned his head and headed to the lower deck. Yin Luo hurriedly followed behind him. She connected Luo Nan's words together and sorted out his logic once more. She suddenly discovered a difficult problem. If he goes ashore for the sake of looking at a beautiful woman up close, or even going a step further. Should I help him? Or should I give him advice? Or should I directly help him? The current Luo Nan was quite different from the image of an obedient child in Xia City. With Yin Li's intelligence channels, she obviously wouldn't take the paternity test incident from a few days ago seriously. But the more she did this, the greater the contrast became. Logically speaking, it's more likely that I'm wrong. But if what the madam said is true, then the current Luo Nan is a depressed child who has just awakened his adult consciousness. He has suppressed his instincts because he hasn't been enlightened yet. After arriving in a foreign region like Ban City, he'll lose his usual restraints. It's not impossible for him to suddenly awaken and erupt. While Yin Li's imagination was running wild, she and Luo Nan boarded the fishing boat that was equipped with the yacht. They took a detour to disembark and spent a bit of time walking from the breakwater to Mr. Zhujiao Weimen. The camphor tree appeared even larger and more majestic up close than it did from afar. Yin Luo was already able to faintly feel the exuberant life force circulating in the surrounding air at this time. She could also feel the chaotic and disorderly power of faith coming from the worshippers around her. The accumulation of a few decades has actually reached this scale. If it's a small religious sect, they can basically use this point to awaken a few ability users who have affinity with this domain. Oh, there are many religious sects in Ban City. Even if most of them don't have a high upper limit, they are still insiders. They shouldn't be blind to this extent. Then, Yin Li's heart was stirred and she looked all around. She had a rather clear standard of search. Soon, she found a monk meditating with his eyes closed in the shadow of an outstretched arm on the west side of the camphor tree. He was called a monk because this person wore a loose robe similar to a kasaya. His hair was kept extremely short. He looked more like a cultivator who wasn't part of the 5 elements. The surrounding citizens who came to pay their respects didn't find this person's existence strange at all. He's an ability user, but he shouldn't be a Buddhist. Compared to the secret orders that supported half the sky of the inner world, the existence of traditional religions was extremely weak in the context of the new era. At the very least, it was completely disproportionate when compared to the scale that practically monopolized the domain of faith before the war. However, once an ability user was born among them, they would often have a more distinct characteristic of a religious sect. Yin Luo, who was rich in experience, could recognize it with a single glance. The monk before her clearly didn't possess that characteristic. However, The aura around his body was quite harmonious with that of the Jordan Gate. He was also tainted with the light of faith. He possessed a special quality that was completely different from that of a secular person. He was an awakened, and his strength wasn't ordinary. He even had a bonus in the vicinity of the Jordan Gate. Enlil furrowed her brows. She felt that she had overlooked too many things in her intelligence-gathering work in Ban City. She immediately made up for it and used special channels to conduct an in-depth understanding. She spent 2 minutes combing through the information. Right when she was about to report it to Luo Nan, the figure of the youth beside her moved slightly. He stepped into the stream of people who were leaving in front of her and went straight back the way he came. Mr. Enlil subconsciously cried out, but she soon came to her senses. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She just followed closely behind. She thought of what Luo Nan said before and raised her eyes to look forward. Sure enough, there was a woman with a beautiful figure about 7 or 8 people away. She wore a traditional local kimono. Her head was slightly lowered as she slowly walked forward with the stream of people. Enlil couldn't see the woman's face, but she could see the skin on the back of the woman's neck that was slightly exposed. The woman's gait was as white as jade, and the woman's gait was extremely graceful. The surrounding men and women unconsciously turned their gazes to size her up. She could basically confirm that the woman was a beauty above average. Of course, Enlil wasn't inferior in the slightest when it came to contorting gazes. This made Luo Nan a bit dissatisfied with her. Keep a low profile. Don't attract attention. Enlil felt quite wronged at this moment. She was stunned for a moment before responding. Then I'll go gather some intelligence on that person first. Luo Nan still stared at the woman without letting go. He just nodded in approval. Enlil let out a breath of relief. At the same time, she vowed to herself that no matter where she went, she would prepare a flying car or some sort of enclosed vehicle. At the very least, she would attract Luo Nan's attention and wouldn't cause him any trouble. Chapter 741. Osaka was a city rebuilt on the ruins. Due to geographical reasons, it was sandwiched by Beishan Lake and the Southern Bay, forming a barbell-like city layout. Beishan Lake was the northernmost part of Osaka, but the southern shore of Beishan Lake was definitely not. There were still a considerable number of residential facilities around the south-central area of Beishan Lake, and a considerable part of them were high-class residential areas. Don't be surprised why people would still build mansions here under the threat of the mutants. Basically, a considerable number of important people in Osaka used this place as a hunting villa. Especially in the past few years after the birth of the Deep Blue Walkers, the world government had basically turned from defense to offense in the wilderness. As the threat continued to decline, the high-level social mode of hunting around the lake became popular. However, this season was just the gap between the spring and summer hunting, and the hunting villa community by the lake seemed empty, with few pedestrians and relatively deserted. When the two people passed by, it was still a relatively difficult thing to ignore each other. Good evening, Mrs. Kitayama. Good evening. The wind tonight is very cool. Yes. The two people passed by each other, leaving only the stiff smile of the housewife in the cool night wind. With this small detail as the starting point, it quickly became the main topic of tonight's high-class villa area. At the boring San Friends gathering of the women, many people commented, Kitayama Uehui, such a rude person. She's just an artist who retired from the entertainment industry. She's really arrogant. I heard that Mr. Kitayama is a powerful person in society. Yes, I heard that. So for a long time, Mrs. Kitayama almost never went out. But I also heard that, the powerful Mr. Kitayama is probably dead. Oh, really? Isn't it? Every month or two, a car would pick her up at the door and come back after about a week. But that kind of car hasn't appeared for a long time. Osaka has been cracking down on societies recently, and it is said that many people were hospitalized and then died. Oh, so that's how it is. Then Mrs. Kitayama has been going to Mr. Jorgamon's place recently. She's going to pray, and it may be a fleeting future. Here, maybe we will soon lose sight of her. Whispers of surprise and excitement could be heard, or they could not be heard. Perhaps Bei Shan Yuehui, who was at the center of the discussion, could hear it, or could not. For now, she was still walking at an unhurried pace, maintaining a calm and indifferent attitude as she walked along the narrow but tidy tree-lined path. After all, it was getting late. Life in the major commercial and entertainment districts of Ban City had just begun, but for the people in this community, it was basically time to rest at home. The further they walked along the boulevard, the fewer people there were. In the end, after walking for more than 100 meters, they didn't see a single person. However, right at this moment, Northmont Shuahue arrived at his own doorstep. The AI butler detected her vital data, and the security system opened the door. "You are back, madam." Bei Shan Yuehui silently walked into the yard. She still walked at the same pace as before, passing through the exquisite front yard. A gentle breeze blew, and the short shrubs and red-edged maple leaves in the yard rustled, welcoming their mistress home. The door to the main house opened as well. Bei Shan Yuehui walked to the entrance, put down her handbag, and bent down to change her shoes. At this moment, the lights in the house suddenly flickered, and the AI butler spoke again. "Sorry, there is some trouble." The voice was cut off, and the lights in the house were completely extinguished. Bei Shan Yuehui straightened up, stunned. But before she could react, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside the room. The moment he rushed into the door, he tightly stuck to Bei Shan Yuehui's waist without leaving any gap. At the same time, he stretched out his elbow across her shoulder, across her throat, and then pulled back, firmly jamming her windpipe and preventing her from making a sound. "Mrs. Bei Shan, poor woman, don't panic, I am here to help you." The voice of the intruder behind her was hoarse, and he breathed heavily. His hot breath rushed past Bei Shan Yuehui's ears. It had nothing to do with physical strength, but a natural reaction after the secretion of hormones. "You have lost the care of a powerful person, haven't you? Without a backer, how can you maintain such an elegant and leisurely life? The future is simply a foreseeable tragedy. Come, I am here to help you. I don't need to do anything extra, just treat me the way you treat that person." Sensing that Kitashin Yuehui's resistance was very weak, the intruder turned her around, still clutching her throat with his hand. With the help of the moonlight shining in from the window, the intruder admired the beauty's delicate face, which was stiff from fear. Yes, this was the face. He had been spying under the camphor tree for a whole 2 months. It was a perfect fit for his aesthetic standards, a combination of beauty and fame. Although in the industry, this woman was also a relatively low-key type, but after more than 10 years of acting career, she should have many fans. Countless people could only look at her, but they would soon moan and beg under his body. Wasn't this the biggest source of motivation for him to become an ability user, to become a powerful person, and to be willing to work hard to cultivate? Now I am also such a person. The dim light of the emergency light in the corner of the wall reflected the intruder's face. This face had already assumed a pious and profound cultivation style, and he had been sitting under the Zujia guard gate intermittently for nearly a year. At this time, he was still wearing a loose robe, but he quickly tore it off impatiently. "Mrs. Bei Shan, remember me. I am Okano Soichiro." "Hey!" The fake monk named Okano Soichiro was too excited. When he tore off his own clothes, he actually gave Bei Shan Yuehui a chance to struggle. This woman, who was dominated by fear, somehow managed to escape from his grasp. She staggered backward, but her hind leg tripped on the corner of the entrance, and her body fell backward, falling heavily on the tatami. Okano Soichiro thought that Bei Shan Yuehui was going to scream, so he quickly rushed forward. But the expected scream did not come. In front of him, Bei Shan Yuehui was like an exquisite doll, only opened her eyes wide in fear. The lower hem of the kimono was stretched out by her naturally spread legs, and above her snow-white feet was the skin of her calves that was in no way inferior, or even smoother. This posture was slightly inelegant, but it was more suitable for the current situation, and it was an appropriate way to show off her beauty. Okano Soichiro was a little surprised, and the flames in his heart rose for the second time, crackling. He couldn't help but praise in his heart, she really is worthy of being a senior mistress who has followed a powerful figure for many years. She knows how to use her capital to avoid greater harm. This is even better. Okano Soichiro was really about to explode. He quickly threw the loose robe that was in the way to the side, revealing a strong body that was only wrapped in the lower half. Mrs. Bei-shan, you have done well. From tonight onwards, you will live a new life, and it will be more comfortable than before. I, Okano Soichiro, a senior cadre of the All-Spirits sect, a person who is close to the gods, a person who is close to the gods. The so-called powerful figures of the underworld are not even worth mentioning compared to me. Come on, Mrs. Bei-shan, you can continue to do it, and show me what you are best at. Kitayama Yuki didn't completely listen to the intruder's request. Perhaps fear had completely seized her soul, she just sat on the tatami, half propped up with her elbows, and stared blankly at the fake monk under the faint light. If there was any movement, it was probably the light pink lipstick on her lips, gently opening and closing as she murmured something. At first, Okano Soichiro thought that she was begging for mercy, but the next second, he heard part of the words clearly. It's the life curse, the worldly love curse, and the great equality curse. There is no difference between the heavenly awakening myriad spirits, like life and hate death, all living beings are the same. In fact, Kitayama Yuki's voice was very soft, and her lips were not visible. If it were any other words, it would be very difficult to distinguish. But Okano Soichiro was too familiar with this part. He was stunned at first, and then he couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't this the prayer of the All-Spirits sect? This set of prayer was obviously adapted from Buddhist scriptures, and the editor was quite insincere. However, within the scope of the spiritual light of the Sakavai Gate, it was indeed quite efficacious. If not for this, who would pay attention to ability users like them who had their eyes on the top of their heads? He didn't expect Kitayama Yuki to be a devout believer. But in front of him, a high-ranking cadre of the All-Spirits sect, she was chanting the All-Spirits curse. This was pandering, it had to be pandering. Come, Mrs. Kitayama, I will teach you a more correct way of chanting. I will show you a miracle, and let you see a new world. Okano Soichiro thought that it might be interesting to put on a preaching act. But after saying so much, he was already parched by the flames in his body. He couldn't hold it in any longer. He took a step forward, reached out, and grabbed the front of Kitayama Yuki's dark blue kimono. He tore it, along with the inner lining, and even loosened the belt. Kitayama Yuki's loosened collar didn't expose too much, but the clear and perfect collarbone was another part of the sexiness of a mature woman. Okano Soichiro was so excited that he almost howled. He couldn't care less about finding a bed or anything else. His body pressed down, and he wanted to taste the cool fragrance of Kitayama Yuki's body again. But at this moment, his chest suddenly trembled, and there was some resistance. It wasn't too big, but some kind of inexplicable and strange feeling started from there, all the way back, stirring in his chest, and then coming out from his back. Numbness and slight pain, as well as the instinctive awakening of fear in the human body, surged into his mind. He widened his eyes and looked at the beautiful face that was right in front of him, who was still muttering an incantation with a unique stiffness. The second and third penetrative attacks came one after another. Okano Soichiro finally turned his gaze to between his chest and abdomen, and then he saw 3 vines as thick as a thumb penetrating into his body from different parts of his chest and abdomen, and they came out from his back that he couldn't see. Fear stimulated his spirit sense. Although he couldn't see, he could feel that the 3 vines were intertwining and twisting above his back, like spirit snakes swimming and coiling. Where did these vines come from? Am I going to die? Confusion and fear, as well as the fatal true damage, instantly took away all his strength. His body went soft, and it was impossible for him to support his body anymore. Naturally, he fell to Kitayama Yuki below him. But the fourth, the fifth. Okano Soichiro couldn't count them at all. His remaining consciousness was no longer suitable for such complicated work. Countless vines and tree roots shot out from Kitayama Yuki's messy kimono, from the originally neat tatami, and from the walls and ceiling. They were not limited to Okano Soichiro's chest, abdomen, and back, but also his hands, feet, head, and all other places that could be pierced and sucked flesh. In the blink of an eye, Okano Soichiro was held in midair by the vines and tree roots. He wasn't dead yet, and the familiar incantation was still echoing in his ears. Why is this happening? Okano Soichiro was, of course, unwilling to die in such a cowardly way. He also tried to chant the incantation and mobilize his supernatural power to save himself, but everything melted under Kitayama Yuki's stiff tone. His supernatural power was unmoving. The vines and tree roots that pierced through his body had absorbed all his vitality, turning him into a pool of muddy stagnant water. And the source of the power that killed him, Okano Soichiro made a muddy sound and tried to reach out his hand, wanting to touch the beautiful face that was close at hand. However, his arm, which had been pierced by several vines and tree roots, had completely lost its momentum. His fingertips moved forward by less than a centimeter, not even a millimeter, before they were forever frozen in midair. And under the greedy suction of the vines and tree roots, they rapidly withered and lost all their flesh and water. His body was the same, turning into a shriveled, curled corpse. Such a horrifying scene happened in front of her, but Kitayama Yuki's beautiful face was still the same as before. She just stopped chanting the incantation, and her eyes were calm and empty as she looked forward. In midair, Okano Soichiro's remains were gradually pulled by the vines and tree roots. Due to the rapid extraction of water and nutrients, the bones that supported his body also quickly lost their strength and shattered. It was impossible for them to resist the pulling force from all directions. In the blink of an eye, he turned from a dried-up corpse to an unrecognizable human shape. Then, he cracked and disintegrated. Most of the remains were taken away by the vines and tree roots and sent into the hidden garbage channel. However, some pieces of skin and flesh fell from between the vines and tree roots, sprinkling on the porch and tatami, and some on the edge of Kitayama Yuki's snow-white footbag. At this time, the advanced AI butler had finally overcome the virus invasion and rebooted and restored its functions. This bit of human tissue debris was naturally cleaned up by the multifunction housekeeping robot that automatically activated. The silent vacuum cleaner sucked away the human tissue debris, including the bit on the footbag. During this time, Kitayama Yuki did not move at all. It was not until the cleaning work was completed that she got up. However, halfway through her movement, she suddenly could not continue her follow-up strength. Her body went limp, and she fell on her back on the tatami that was already riddled with holes. She tried again, but even her shoulders could not leave the floor. Only her fingers and feet twitched slightly. Even in this terrible state, her beautiful and delicate face still did not change. Her eyes met the ceiling, and they were also empty and unfocused. There was no fear or panic, and there was no aura that a human should have. Chapter 742. The AI housekeeper's simulated personality was that of a mature and considerate man at home. His voice was gentle and gentle. His announcement was done step by step and carried a sense of leisure. However, the main hall and the entrance were still in a state of being riddled with holes from the piercing vines and tree roots. The mistress of the house was lying on the ground. Her body was stiff and her legs were unnaturally bent. Part of her body was still in the position of being violated. Under such circumstances, the housekeeper's announcement appeared particularly strange and comical. There were no cars parked outside this high-class villa. In a practical sense, the housekeeper's announcement was just an announcement that the AI system had submitted to its new master. Nothing more. Following the announcement, the main door of the room opened according to normal procedures. Luo Nan and Yin Lu walked in one after the other. Compared to Yin Li's vigilant and stern body language, Luo Nan was much more relaxed. He even had the leisure to struggle at the entrance, should I take off my shoes? Even though the housekeeping robot was already working very hard, the uneven-sized holes on the ground, the rubble and burrs protruding from the edges, and so on dispelled his thoughts. He stepped directly onto the tatami and arrived next to Kitashin Yuehui, who was lying on her back. He looked closely at the doll-like exquisite beauty before him a few times and nodded, "It's her." Does this count as luck or strength? Who? Yinlu already had some guesses in her mind, but the answer was far beyond the norm. She didn't dare to come to a conclusion easily. She could only beat around the bush and ask another question. The Mr. Kitashin that the AI housekeeper mentioned, it's Mr. Kitashin's car. Luo Nan corrected the key details seriously and considerately extracted the key information from the AI housekeeper's system using the external neuron and displayed it through the projection. Anyone with a bit of common sense in this field would be able to clearly distinguish that the reference database in the system's backend was absolutely not a face or a human body's characteristic vector. The code inside didn't have the corresponding keywords at all. What appeared instead was just as Luo Nan said. It was more like a car and its license plate, plus a special electronic signal. Luo Nan spread his hands. Aside from this Mrs. Kitashin, the access control system only has that car as its reference data. In other words, other than the AI butler being polite to the mistress, the only exception was a car with a specific license plate and signal transmitter. Then, where was the male owner of this high-class residence, Mr. Beishan, the powerful figure in society that the surrounding residents spoke of? I'll send someone to check it right away. Yinlu immediately took a picture of the key code and handed it over to the professionals of the order. However, at this moment, perhaps stimulated by their voices, on the tatami, Kitayama Yuehui's beautiful but hollow eyes focused. The low shrubs and half-tall maple trees in the courtyard rustled again. Most importantly, behind the ceiling, walls, and tatami mats, the rattan roots that were brimming with vitality were also leaping about. Learning from Okano Soichiro's mistake, Yinlu instinctively connects with the blood-soul temple in the abyssal district and interferes in the spiritual and material levels. There seems to be a ring of flame dancing on the surface of her skin. Luo Nan waved his hand at her, "Don't start a conflict. It wouldn't be good if the neighbors found out. But this is not something I can control." Yinlu sensed the vigorous and restless vitality in the surroundings. She felt quite awkward. She was a secretary, so of course she knew that the boss could issue some unreasonable instructions at any time. How to execute them and effectively buffer them was a field of study. The problem was that there really wasn't any leeway for buffering in the current situation, but in the blink of an eye, Yinlu discovered that she was overthinking things. Luo Nan really didn't have the self-awareness of being a boss. He did things more personally. The youth snapped his fingers. He probably felt that this would make him look quite handsome. After a pointless show-off, a powerful and inconceivable supernatural power drove him. Yinlu saw the rattan roots that had been accumulating power at the edges of the holes seemingly shiver in unison. They froze for at least half a second before they began to withdraw to a more concealed place. The restless vitality that gathered in the surroundings also transformed into scattered fluctuations that receded into the distance like a receding tide. "Mr. That person won't disturb us for a while." Luo Nan squatted down beside Beishan Shuehui. He extended his hand to touch that exquisite and enchanting face. At the same time, he chatted with Yinlu. It's very normal for a mutant to be powerful. But to be able to achieve a state of symbiosis with all kinds of vegetation within a diameter of 20 kilometers and divide them into orderly levels. They can rapidly exchange information, effectively transmit all kinds of nutrients, and continue to push the level of life. This kind of method already possesses a relatively solid social nature. I've only seen similar examples in the Vulcan ant colony. It doesn't matter if there's someone guiding it during this process. Mr. Jordan Wyman is quite amazing. Luo Nan even used his other hand to pat the tatami as he spoke. This could be considered a friendly greeting to the mutant camphor tree that was currently avoiding this dangerous area. That's right. You give me face, and I won't destroy the vegetation kingdom on the southern shore of Beishan Lake that you've built with great difficulty. You can also continue to be the king and god within this 300 to 500 square kilometer area. Yes, Mr. Jordan Wyman was able to achieve this scale. This was directly related to his low-key and pragmatic attitude. It seemed that he was very good at cooperating with others. He was willing to listen to others' opinions, and he was able to distinguish when to seize the center position and tyrannically abuse others, and when to retreat to the corner to develop wretchedly. He wasn't like the Vulcan ant colony. They relied on their innate talent to forcefully open up their base and show off their operations. No one could blame them for being harvested batch after batch. Regardless of whether it was Luo Nan's explanatory words or the deeper meaning behind his words, Yinlu had a certain difficulty in understanding them. She could only discuss the matter as it stood. Mister, are you saying that the aberrant camphor tree is playing tricks behind all of this? It controls the surrounding vegetation and this Mrs. Beishan. Yinlu cut off the second half of her sentence when she spoke up to this point. This was because she was still unable to explain the problem with Mr. Beishan's car. Luo Nan also laughed. Mr. Jordan Wyman is an expert in transforming plants, but he suddenly jumped to a higher mammal. Moreover, he looks just like a normal person. Isn't it too horrifying to consider this? Yes. Yes. Yinlu felt that her response was like that of a new graduate. Other than saying yes, she didn't have any other value to her existence. This made her feel a bit frustrated, as well as a rapidly soaring sense of crisis. If she kept wandering outside of her boss's core thoughts, then her job as a secretary would most likely end. She wouldn't be able to achieve the more difficult goal of deepening relationships. This didn't make sense. Yinlu had always felt that she was a smart and astute person. Even in front of Mrs. Halder, she could still do the work of a good advisor. But beside Luo Nan, when faced with this youth's leaping thinking pattern and his unpredictable temperament and attitude, it was far too difficult to form a response. Could it be that her plan's positioning was still lacking? Luo Nan didn't care about what Yinlu thought. It was quite refreshing to capture his target in one go, but the follow-up verification work needed to be done bit by bit. His fingers moved down from Beishan Shuahui's head to her neck and shoulders, as well as the slightly exposed skin of her chest, in a circular motion. During this time, Beishan Shuahui, who was lying on the tatami, had her fingers and toes twitching. She seemed to be resisting, but she was more like a machine that had lost its power source. She was unable to complete a complete movement. She could only let Luo Nan do as he pleased. All of this fell into Yinlu's eyes. She gaped, but she couldn't help but think of the problem of having 3 helpers. But right now, she decided to be mute for the time being. After touching for a while, Luo Nan didn't even turn his head. He waved his hand at Yinlu. You come touch as well. After a moment of stupefaction, Yinlu earnestly performed her duties as a secretary. She listened to her boss's words and walked to the other side of Beishan Shuahui's lying body. She knelt on one knee and extended her hand to touch the snow-white skin. Luo Nan pointed from the side. Don't just touch her chest. Touch her face as well. Don't you feel that her body is a bit skinnier, but her face is a bit more vivid? Yinlu's emotions were complicated. She exerted a bit of force with her fingers. This way, she could feel the subtle differences brought about by the different amounts of fat under the skin. Of course, there were natural differences between the face and the chest, but there was no point in nitpicking in this kind of situation. Are there any traces of a disguise? It seems like you women are very good at makeup. Yinlu had a tendency to immerse herself in the situation for a moment. Luckily, she quickly regained her composure and spoke in a matter-of-fact manner. Her foundation is very good. It's just that she's wearing light makeup. It's unlikely that she's using the head-swapping technique. Of course, it's also possible that she's had plastic surgery or wore some sort of prosthesis. It's technically possible, but it needs to be tested. Tested? Like X-rays or something. More or less. If it's the skin and muscle structure, we might need an MRI. At this time, Inlu finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She voiced out the conjecture that was previously denied by rationality. Sir, you suspect that this Beishan Shuahui is that? Yin Guang was halfway through his words when he suddenly felt his lips and teeth go numb. It was as if an extremely penetrating cold wind had blown through the air. And on the other side, Luo Nan had opened his hand. His 5 fingers closed together as he probed towards Beishan Shuahui's face, slowly moving up and down. Right now, Luo Nan was staring at Beishan Shuahui, and Beishan Shuahui's empty eyes were staring back at Luo Nan's face. The two stared at each other through the palm of their hands. Their line of sight was blocked, and they didn't say a word. It was extremely treacherous and bewitching. Sir. Yin Lu didn't receive a response. She could only stare wide-eyed at Luo Nan's incomprehensible operation. Luo Nan slightly narrowed his eyes. The mental plane and the material plane interfered effectively. He borrowed the palm of his fingers to build a basic electromagnetic configuration framework. He accelerated the cycling frequency of the electromagnetic wave, pushing it into the field of ionizing radiation in one fell swoop. It formed an extremely short wavelength, extremely high-energy X-ray. Under the effective binding, the X-ray continuously bombarded the structure of Beishan Shuahui's face. Luo Nan watched the X-ray penetrate and destroy the skin, muscles, and bones, and he received immediate feedback. Several seconds later, Luo Nan shook his head. The X-ray's penetrative power was too strong for the detection of soft tissues. The detection results weren't that great. MR, on the other hand, involved requirements such as the high-speed switching of the gradient field and the detection of the state of the hydrogen atom. Configuration changes and the precision of the mental senses were all big problems. Oh, it seems like the UV level is just right. What? The absorption rate and the reflectivity are clearly different. This is a sun-blocking prosthesis. What good luck. 10 seconds later, Luo Nan was certain in his heart. He nodded slightly. There really is a layer of prosthesis, but the fusion is quite tight. It looks like a special key is needed. It should be the special characteristics of that person's soul strength. As he spoke, his mind had already cut into the cloud world. He carefully observed the target's soul body over there. I remember simulating it once or twice in the past. Luo Nan's training in the high-end imitation show on the Pacific Ocean had displayed its use. Perhaps Luo Nan couldn't change the essence of his soul, but he could use his outstanding configuration skills to precisely interfere and transform the material and mental environment. He could disrupt the transmission and reception of information, achieving the objective effect of passing off the fake as the real thing. He could perfectly imitate the mode of operation of that old geezer Gong Chi's soul strength. It would only be easier if he lowered it by 1 or 2 levels. The prosthesis that Luo Nan locked onto was the newest, deceived. Luo Nan's suspended palm descended, lightly imprinting itself between Beishan Shuahui's eyebrows. When he raised his hand, Luo Nan's naturally closed 5 fingers had already gently peeled off a layer of marvelous fog-like creation. At this moment, the light and shadow of Beishan Shuahui's palm-sized face were blurred. It was as if a layer of floating mist had been blown away. It was clearly the same silhouette, but the appearance that appeared before Luo Nan's eyes was vastly different. The most obvious change was that Beishan Shuahui's cheeks had become thinner. Her cheekbones were higher, her eyes had become slightly longer, her eyebrows had become thin and sharp, and her face had become excessively straight. This caused the structure of her facial features to become more three-dimensional, and she appeared much colder and sharper. This was a great change in temperament. She might still be considered a beauty right now, but she had instantly transformed from an elegant and exquisite doll that could be picked up and played with in one's hand. She had turned into a cast iron sculpture that had fallen to the ground, but there were still remnants of her dignified bearing. It was to the extent that her basic silhouette hadn't completely changed, but she looked like a completely different person. Actually, there was a large difference between this appearance and the spellcaster who had appeared in the form of a spirit body back at Ocean Sky Cloud City. It was probably the difference between quick-wittedness and rigidity. But no matter what, Beishan Shuahui, who had changed her temperament, already matched the image on the information nearly perfectly. Snake tongue. Yinlu let out a low cry. She gasped in admiration, but she was even more astonished. She looked at Luo Nan's series of operations in a state of extreme astonishment. Especially the bewildering and suffocatingly fast deciphering method in the latter half of the process. It displayed a new special ability that Luo Nan had never displayed before others. The simulation of soul strength was one thing. Though they couldn't understand it, everyone knew of Luo Nan's exceptional talent in the mental side. But how was he able to produce, control, and detect various types of ionizing radiation? This should be an ability that could probe down to the microscopic level. Don't look at this sort of small task that could be easily completed by professional instruments. It didn't matter if it was practical or not, the number of ability users in the entire world who could do it with their bare hands was probably just a handful of fingers and toes. And they were undoubtedly the tight combination of super strength and super talent. They didn't even cross the bottom line of being extraordinary. Any one of them was an influential figure that could shake the entire earth with just a stomp of their feet. Oh, there was one exception. He had died not too long ago. It was Jin Tong, who was buried within the material structure of the Blood Soul Temple. His corpse was nowhere to be seen. It was basically confirmed that he had fallen to Luo Nan's hands. Combined with Luo Nan's special requirements for the energy center, Yinlu couldn't help but let her thoughts fly. She unfolded a series of complex associations, and at the same time, she bore the corresponding throbbing emotions of her thoughts. Luo Nan was stronger than she had estimated. He was much stronger. Chapter 743. Chapter 463. The Truth. What is this? Luo Nan lightly clenched his fist. The strange object in his palm was like a semi-condensed mist. It was none other than the prosthetic body he had peeled off from Snake Tongue's cheek. It felt substantial to the touch, like a ball of fine yarn, but when he let go of it, it could float in the air on its own. Moreover, it could continuously absorb water from the air. When it absorbed a certain amount, he could even hear the gurgling sound of water. When it accumulated to a certain stage, it began to evaporate and disperse. It was very interesting. Of course, the most amazing thing about it was that it could seamlessly fuse with the flesh and blood of the human body under the interference of soul force, forming a layer of natural skin that was transparent from inside out. The structure of the pores, blood vessels, and other structures could all be flawless. It was simply a divine tool for disguising one's appearance. The information on Snake Tongue didn't contain any similar information. However, such a special object was also famous in the inner world, so Yinlu definitely knew about it. It should be the Veil of Concealment. Due to its special material and effects, it is publicly recognized as a strange object that doesn't belong to this era. Luo Nan blinked. This is the Veil of Concealment. The one that is on par with the Veil of Silence in the hands of the Deputy Secretary General of the headquarters, Gong Qi. He had seen similar words when he was tracking and monitoring in the cloud, but he didn't have a deep memory of it. Yinlu was very familiar with it. Yes. The muslin of concealment conceals one's appearance, while the muslin of silence conceals one's spiritual body. It is said that the combination of the two is the complete appearance of the mystical creature. It is said that it can completely hide a person's traces in the world. Even if an extraordinary is nearby, they will not be able to detect it. It can be said to be one of the strongest assassination tools. No wonder. Luo Nan muttered to himself. In this way, Snake Tongue's participation in the hostile actions against him had a direct relationship of interest. Looking at the subsequent developments, it was clear that Gong Qi had only thrown out the bait and had no intention of letting it go. Perhaps he had the intention of fishing back. However, that old thing did not expect that the little fish would be eaten by the big fish after eating the bait. As a result, he was directly pulled into the puddle, unable to struggle out. Luo Nan subconsciously squeezed the mass of mist until his palm became moist and beads of water dripped down. Only then did he loosen his grip. Seeing that he was lost in thought, Yin Lu curiously asked, "Sir, what did you say?" "Oh, it's nothing. I'm just curious how this thing was made." It's precisely because they can't understand that they're called, not belonging to this era. Many people believe that it isn't a man-made product, but rather a natural product from a plane like the Deep Blue World, or perhaps a special remnant of a dead mutant. When did the veil of concealment and the veil of silence separate? Well, it seems like it has always been in a separate state. Then how can you be sure that they are a set? Yin Lu was in a sorry state after being attacked by the curious baby. She could only make guesses. It's probably from the function, and the appearance is indeed similar. Oh. In the end, Luo Nan didn't ask any further questions. He just squeezed the watery muslin in his hand a couple more times before letting go. He let the muslin of concealment float in the air, and his attention returned to Snake Tongue, who had already revealed her true appearance. Yin Lu sighed inwardly. She half changed the topic and half sighed ruefully. Snake Tongue's move is like the legendary painted skin story. No, if it's in Ban City, it should be the legend of the Bone Lady. Bone Lady? It's the folklore of the archipelago. The general idea is that a woman who was humiliated and bullied in her life would turn into a malicious ghost after her death in anger. Because her flesh and blood would turn to ash, only a pile of bones would remain. Therefore, she would use the skin of a beautiful woman to disguise herself and take revenge on men with vile characters. Snake Tongue isn't someone who was humiliated and bullied. Of course, it's hard to say now. Yin Lu blinked. She still didn't quite understand Luo Nan's words. However, she was soon ordered by Luo Nan to search the entire residence for all sorts of clues. As for Luo Nan himself, he remained at the mysterious gate. He sat on the tatami in front of Snake Tongue, his chin resting on his hand as he pondered. Yin Lu, who was searching the residence, passed by the living room a few times. Luo Nan didn't always maintain that posture. He had already opened the virtual work area, observing and drawing Snake Tongue. That's right. He was using Snake Tongue as a model, a continuous sketch or sketch. It was most likely the latter. This was because Luo Nan had changed locations several times in a short period of time. The angle of the drawing in the virtual work area was constantly changing. On the other hand, Snake Tongue kept twitching in place until she exhausted the last bit of her strength. She fell completely limp before Luo Nan's eyes. Yin Lu couldn't help but feel that if she had a video camera in her hands, she would be able to completely record the scene from before. She wouldn't need to edit it at all. It could be considered a horror film. She was really unable to understand Luo Nan's logic. She could only earnestly do what Luo Nan had arranged. She wandered around the various areas of the residence for around half an hour before returning to report, "Sir, we've discovered a life support system in the basement. There's also an ice coffin. The reserve nutrient fluid within the oxygen chamber and the automatic circulation system have been completely used up. The ice coffin hasn't been used yet. And there's a curse barrier in the basement, but it has already lost effectiveness. There are also traces of rattan roots piercing through. Some of them were used for coordination, so the traces are relatively old. Some of them were used for destruction, so the traces are relatively new." So, Yin Lu paused for a moment. She saw that Luo Nan didn't express anything, so she continued speaking, "So I have a preliminary guess. Snake Tongue and that Mr. Journeyman once had a close cooperative relationship. Snake Tongue helped Journeyman awaken his soul and regulate his energy. And Journeyman provided protection and nutrients to Snake Tongue's body after her out-of-body state. However, Snake Tongue's out-of-body state this time was far too long. It exceeded the normal range, causing Mr. Journeyman, who protects Sakura City, to develop some sort of malice. At the very least, he slacked off in his work related to providing nutrients. Luo Nan didn't comment on the logic of Yin Li's speculations. He just mentioned, there's also the Myriad Spirit Order. Yes, there's also the Myriad Spirit Order. Yin Li didn't make a light judgment on this matter. The clues were truly too tangled. The incantation Snake Tongue chanted was the common prayer of this order. And then Journeyman appeared and killed a high-ranking officer of this order. And this high-ranking officer was someone who cultivated under the tree for a long time. It seemed that he had a close relationship with Journeyman. Then, I'll arrange for people to clearly investigate the situation with the Myriad Spirit Order. Yin Lu inquired probingly. Luo Nan still didn't comment. Yin Lu was a bit confused, but there were some things she needed to report. There's also information related to Mr. Beishan's car. It's a Falcon-class commercial car that people of the underworld like to use. It's parked in the underground parking lot of Ishikawa Real Estate in Sakura City all year round. It's rarely used, and the property does maintenance once a year. There's some truth to the gossip in the residential area. Starting from 4 years ago, the Falcon-class commercial car would drive out for a week every month. Its destination is this residence. But the people driving are different every time. According to the registration information, they belong to different driving service companies. They're hired to do things, and they're contacted online every time. There's very little information left behind. As for the deeper details, we'll look for the hired drivers to confirm. Luo Nan went, okay. Then he shook his head. Mr. Yin Luo was about to be crushed by her doubt into depression. The rest are just insignificant details. Luo Nan extended his hand and fiddled back and forth in the virtual work area. The dozen or so sketches he had done revolving around Snake Tongue in the past half hour were switched back and forth with the movements of his fingers. His hands moved, and he spoke absent-mindedly. Right now, we can basically confirm that Snake Tongue has North Shanshuahue's identity. She's managed a hiding lair for herself. What role does Wu Weimen play here? What role does the Myriad Spirit Order play? How did that car get arranged? Is the real North Shanshuahue dead? Or is she Snake Tongue's hidden identity to begin with? There are many details to dig into. The deeper you dig, the more you can see its exquisite and ingenious structure. But so what? Then, we're already here, aren't we? All of Snake Tongue's disguises have lost their meaning. Her suspected collaborator, Mr. Zhuo Weimen, has also given up on this place. We hold her life and death in our hands. Right now, we just need to cover her nose and mouth, and all of her efforts will turn to ashes. Yin Lu was speechless. It was true that Luo Nan's tone was absent-mindedly, but she couldn't mistake his particularly serious gaze. She didn't doubt in the slightest that this youth would carry out these words without the slightest hesitation if necessary. From this, it could be seen just how intense Luo Nan's hatred towards Snake Tongue was. All of this was because of the building in Xia City known as the North Shore Gear. No, it would be more accurate to say that it was because of the deep foundation of Luo Nan's core, the concept mask. It was a special familial love that he longed for immensely but was destined to never be able to recover. Yin Lu lowered her gaze. She didn't dare to look Luo Nan in the eye, but Luo Nan's voice continued to transmit into her mind. Snake Tongue has done everything perfectly. Full marks for logistics arrangements. Excellent tactical design. However, she made a fatal error in her judgment of the most crucial link of the overall situation. She didn't clearly see the mission provider at the start. She misjudged the ultimate goal of the mission at the end, which was me. The start and the end were a complete mess. She didn't have a way to deal with a powerful enemy that transcends her scope. Her judgment of the overall situation was naturally abysmal. So what if the details in the middle were perfect? Yin Lu raised her eyelids slightly and her lips parted slightly. She wanted to say something along the lines of, "Mr. is right." But what she saw next was Luo Nan pulling out different sketches one after another from the virtual work area. Some of them had concrete images. Some of them were just abstract silhouettes. In total, there were over 20 sketches. Right when she was baffled, she saw Luo Nan wave his hand in a casual manner. The vast majority of these sketches in the virtual work area flared with the special effect of flames. Then they were annihilated into nothingness. This was a sign that the system had completely deleted them. Mr. Yin Luo was completely confused. Yin Jian isn't far. You need to take this as a warning. Luo Nan's eyes were exceptionally bright and clear before the flames ignited in the virtual work area. He laughed once more. I was lazy and didn't add the most important parameter. Luckily I haven't handed in my homework yet. Otherwise, it would really be ugly. Luo Nan spoke words that Yin Lu didn't understand at all. He stood up and walked outside. Let's go. We need to work overtime tonight. Yin Lu completely gave up on understanding Luo Nan's thoughts. She just followed him. But when she saw Snake Tongue lying at the edge of the entrance, she couldn't help but ask for instructions. I'll send people to move Snake Tongue. No. Don't worry about her. Luo Nan waved his hand and the veil of concealment, which was floating beside him, was cast back onto Snake Tongue's face. It automatically followed the previous settings and transformed into Northmont Shuahui's exquisite and enchanting face. Even though I don't want to say it, it's really too much of a pity to destroy such an exquisite and ingenious setup. Don't you think so? Chapter 744. Snake Tongue wasn't sure if she was still alive. Her soul had already been in an out-of-body state for over half a year. To be precise, it had been 183 days. A spellcaster's high-precision perception of changes in the world allowed her to be like a clock, meticulously recording the passage of time. But right now, the only reference for this ability was herself. From the looks of it, the only effect it had was a meaningless record of death. She didn't know if this had already broken the records of the inner world, but she knew that her condition was very, very bad. Perhaps she was only one step away from death. It was still the same question. Was she really still alive? Legends of undead immortals had been passed down in East Asian cultures since ancient times. Although the details were different, the general idea was that cultivators abandoned their fleshly bodies and their souls left their bodies to roam between heaven and earth. Because of this, they possessed inconceivable divine abilities. But the trajectory of their lives unexpectedly drew a parabola. At the end, they fell into the abyss of despair. Perhaps in a few years or a few decades, Snake Tongue's example would be added to the footnotes of undead immortals. But the most likely outcome for her would be the same as the swirling and tearing clouds in front of her. She would be silently annihilated without the slightest trace. One didn't need any precise perception to determine the rate at which a spirit body decayed. Her time approached with each passing day, and her body gradually lost the ability to move independently. Therefore, for the past 2 days, Snake Tongue was no longer like a spirit that followed Gong Qi around in the cloud world. Gong Qi was indifferent to this. The relationship between Snake Tongue and Gong Qi had already undergone a clear change. Moreover, it was a destructive result. On Snake Tongue's side, there was hope and despair, vigilance and numbness. On Gong Qi's side, half a year had passed. No matter how gloomy and ruthless he was, it was impossible for him to perfectly control his emotions at all times. Bewilderment, fear, irritation, and anxiety. These negative elements were like prisoners. Bit by bit, they scattered out and were received by Snake Tongue. Finally, on a certain day, at a certain moment, these accumulated elements broke through the limits of the hope in Snake Tongue's heart. The net of her will was finally unable to bear the truth of despair. Snake Tongue erupted. She questioned Gong Qi's lack of progress over the past half a year. Of course, she also questioned the substance of Gong Qi's activities here. Then, the truth of everything was revealed. Gong Qi, this insufferably arrogant extraordinary who seemed to have a card up his sleeve, was actually just a prisoner trapped in this cloudy world. The two circumstances weren't fundamentally different, just that Gong Qi's reliance on his flesh shell was a bit less, and his arrangements for his escape were a bit more stable. He had the ability user association as his backing, and so on. When all these things add up, it's actually a qualitative difference. The difference was so great that it made Snake Tongue jealous. Jealous to the point of insanity. Gong Qi had the ability user association behind him, while she was just a lone wandering soul. She didn't have anyone she could fully trust, nor did she have the strength to back up her trust. Even if she had a grade B Cursmancer who was extremely rare in the inner plane, she could only carefully manage her own base between the cracks of various factions. After so many years, she had only managed to find a seemingly loyal but actually more and more unfathomable mutated tree demon. She had only managed to build a small, insignificant church with some deceptive designs. In the out-of-body state, she could use these designs to last 2 months, 3 months, or at most half a year. There was simply no meaning in continuing to prolong it. She even felt that even if she immediately broke free and returned her spirit body to her body, with her current state, the greatest possibility was that she would die along with her fleshly body. So, I can already be considered dead, right? A good swimmer drowns. The meaning of my life is to embellish those absurd legends, right? Snake Tongue chuckled softly. The emotions she felt in her spirit body state were nothing more than remnants of human habits. Every bit of these habitual traces consumed a certain amount of energy. Correspondingly, when the energy was consumed to the point where it wasn't enough to maintain the foundation of her spirit body, these habitual traces could only be regarded as meaningless, superfluous, and disperse first. I'm already dead. Snake Tongue came to this conclusion. If she had a choice, she would have already taken her own life. But the current situation was that her spirit body was wrapped in a layer of light muslin that was hard to fathom, the muslin of silence. This reward that Gong Qi had given her in advance had now become a shackle that controlled and monitored her. When Snake Tongue was at her peak, she could still set up a shielding layer to block and interfere with her. But now she was so weak that she had to rely on the muslin of silence to ensure that her spirit body didn't collapse. Conversely, she couldn't make her spirit body collapse even if she wanted to. This strange item was gradually corroding the structure of her spirit body. As a curse master, Snake Tongue could guess Gong Qi's plans. Perhaps before long, she would only be able to continue existing between heaven and earth in a distorted form like an artifact spirit. This was something she feared even more than death. Unfortunately, she didn't have the strength to retaliate. Why had she fallen to such a state? Her reflection had just begun when Snake Tongue's subjective thoughts intentionally cut it short. She didn't want to engage in these meaningless thoughts. Apart from continuing to consume her soul force, it would cause her to rapidly and continuously approach that pitiful artifact spirit. She emptied her mind and silently curled up under the muslin of silence. She watched the surrounding clouds surge and tear apart before drifting away. Gradually, her mind became somewhat absent-minded. Perhaps dissipating like this wasn't a bad thing. The moment her consciousness collapsed might be true liberation. Snake Tongue was absent-minded and absent-minded. Her mind seemed to truly dissipate along with the clouds in this strange and despairing void. And in the chaotic prelude to the complete destruction of nothingness and the complete arrival of chaos, a color completely different from the white clouds and bloody light she was accustomed to seeped in. It was like splashing ink, instantly rendering the edge of her perception. An illogical change of situation, it was a dream. Snake Tongue had a dream. She dreamed of Sakura City. She dreamed of the shrine she lived in during her youth. She dreamed of the clear ripples of North Mountain Lake. She dreamed of the color of night that blended perfectly with the lake water. Under the hazy curtain of darkness, she calmly walked on a tree-lined road. The cool breeze that blew against her face carried the fresh scent of a fragrant camphor tree in the middle of its flowering season. Zhuo Weimen seemed honest and sincere, but he was a freak that wasn't worthy of trust. It was this point that gave people a favorable impression of him. Mrs. Yamamoto snorted at her. Her face, which couldn't even be supported by hyaluronic acid, was filled with jealousy. Right, She was also Northmont Yuehui. In her early years, in order to conceal her identity, she had personally operated a fake body to satisfy the desires of a few young girls. That was an age of freedom. She could freely switch between two identities, and she could casually tease those foolish people who were drowned in money, beauty, and power. Now that she thought back to those days, she felt that they were quite pleasant. But unknowingly, her happy life had ended. It was probably after she became a B-rank curse mage that she began to have even greater ambitions towards cultivation. She wholeheartedly worked hard to climb even higher peaks. Snake Tongue, who was also Northmont Yuehui, had returned home while drifting through her memories. Up until now, everything had been fine. She put down her handbag and bent over to change her shoes. In the next moment, the attack arrived. Snake Tongue was absent-minded once more because her instinctive reaction was completely ineffective. Her defensive counterattack had been completely reduced to nothingness. Even the tiny bit of vital energy left in her soul body had scattered quite a bit from this torment, pushing her one step closer to the edge of death. Reality and fiction, hope and despair, were separated by a layer of a dream. She nearly lost control of her emotions. What burned was a mixture of impatience, anger, despair, and that tiny bit of stubborn hope. Snake Tongue's soul body was scorched, and she couldn't stop trembling. What's going on? The abrupt sound wave vibration caused Snake Tongue to wake up with a start. Gong Qi's cold face shattered the dream that made one go crazy and despair. This powerful person still maintained the strength of an extraordinary. Even though he was in his soul-body state, his gaze was still as focused as before. Dense clouds of doubt tumbled within. Snake Tongue stared at him until Gong Qi's gaze turned a bit colder. What did you do? Oh, he didn't know. The veil of silence was constantly monitoring her, but she hadn't discovered any clues. Was it really just a dream? This was what Snake Tongue thought and said, I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming that I'm going to die. Snake Tongue suddenly felt that it was extremely comical when she saw Gong Qi's instant bewilderment. She laughed loudly, and her soul body was like a candle flame in the wind, swaying in the violent winds above the clouds. Gong Qi looked at her, speechless. Regardless of whether it was the violent winds above the clouds or the laughter, it was impossible for them to be transmitted to another spacetime. However, there were some special psychic waves that possessed even more marvelous radiation and penetrative properties. Fan Lu suddenly opened his eyes in the Lake City region of Earth, which was completely unrelated to the cloud world. He could see that the main body of the world was still dark, but the rampant spotlights and noisy music painted the environment into a nightclub atmosphere. That's right, this is the nightclub. How did I get here? Oh, after sending off the boss, he came back to greet that lunatic centaur. In the end, that fellow maintained a high level of excitement for a long time. He forcefully dragged him and little Zhao, who had hurried over to support him, to the highest-class nightclub in Lake City to drink and celebrate. Little Zhao was already hanging in the corner. As for Fan Lu himself, he seemed to have fallen asleep and had a dream. Dream? What did he dream of again? The alcohol stimulated part of his brain to slow down. Fan Lu already had no sensitivity towards the vague memories of his dream. He didn't wait for him to be more clear-headed. A grimace painted with blush, eyebrow pencil, and lipstick suddenly blocked his eyes. The grimace opened its mouth and roared, "Get up and get high. F***ck, what a nightmare. What the hell are you doing, centaur?" That's right, there seemed to be a centaur in his dream. That fellow was messing around in the old base. Fan Lu's thoughts were broken again. In reality, the centaur in the real world was grabbing his shoulder and shaking him violently. The shaking made the 1 kilogram of alcohol that he had just poured into his mouth want to be sprayed onto the ugly face in front of him. If that happened, he would be dead for sure. Fan Lu decided to go out and sober up. He could actually dream of this centaur. If he continued to play with this lunatic, he might take the initiative to drill into the gene modification room. He covered his mouth and waved his hand to push away the centaur. He hurriedly got up and walked out. However, just as he took a step, he was grabbed by the back of his collar and forcefully pulled back. At the same time, another 1 kilogram bottle of brandy was forcefully stuffed into his mouth. Woo woo woo, the centaur laughed loudly until his entire face was distorted. At the same time, he didn't forget to call out to the various beauties in the room, "Take off his pants, let's celebrate. Also, whoever gets this guy's belt, no matter how much other venues offer, I will pay them all. That girl will be the queen tonight." The 7 or 8 women in the private room screamed at the same time. The next moment, Fan Lu, who was drunk, was drowned by the pink arms and legs. His eyes rolled up, and his remaining consciousness asked the ultimate question in the world: who am I? Where am I? Chapter 745. April 28, 2097. It was the weekend and the moon was waning. However, it was still a bright moon that did not fall at night. Whether it was on the shore or on the lake, the view was flat. The lake and the sky seemed to be devoid of dust. In Bansheng, such moonlight was said to be able to shine through the Beishan Lake and reach the ruins of the ancient capital under the lake. Therefore, many Bansheng residents went on a family trip to the Beishan Lake to enjoy the scenery of moon overlooking Mountain Island. There were also people who set off fireworks or took a boat to the lake until the latter half of the night. Thanks to the moonlight, the incense of Mr. Zoe Jiawei was also very strong these 2 days. The clusters of white flowers on the branches and leaves seemed to be able to store moonlight, which contrasted with the green leaves. It was dazzling. Yin Lu stood on the top deck and looked at the lakeside where the figures were gradually thinning out. Most of them were looking at the special camphor tree. She was only 2 or 3 kilometers away from the lakeside. The person on the shore must have also noticed this. The aquatic plants near the shore also seemed to be very active, rippling light waves in the shallow water. A very cautious guy. Yin Lu had no intention of challenging Zoe Jiawei's vigilance. Speaking of which, it should have been scared out of its wits in the past 2 days. Well, the surrounding residents were actually not having a good time. However, everyone was muddle-headed and forgot everything when they woke up. If you insist on being isolated from the world, then you can't blame others. With a smile, Yin Lu sent a signal to the crew. The ray yacht turned around. Like a dolphin, it swam on the sparkling Beishan Lake, showing off its skills and breaking through the waves. Soon, it left the trees and stone embankment on the southern shore behind. However, at this time, Yin Li's mind still maintained a vague connection with the other side. She herself did not have this ability. What she relied on was the Blood Soul Temple in the Abyss district. It was through the magic of the Blood Soul Temple that she could collect the restless emotions that were constantly gathering and pressurizing in the relatively vast area on the southern shore of the Beishan Lake. It originated from the dream. In front of Yin Lu, the virtual workspace was always lit, forming a beautiful light color balance with the sprinkling moonlight. In addition, a virtual keyboard was also projected. Yin Li's slender fingers danced on the keyboard as she drafted the letter. Yin Lu chose to use this retro method to sort out what she had done, experienced, and guessed in the 3 days since she arrived in Bansheng City. She wanted to find a connection and better explain it to her boss who was thousands of kilometers away. So far, only 25% of the total budget of the operation has been spent. Practically every item is below expectations. Aside from the basic consumables, this item has already exceeded the budget by 4 times. Mr. Luo Nan has displayed astonishing efficiency, both in the way he arrived in Bansheng City and in the way he acted after arriving. It only took him an hour to achieve the basic goal that he had set in the beginning. All the time that followed was spent on arduous and monotonous cultivation and experiments. Yin Lu finished inspecting the draft from before. She pondered for a bit before continuing to write. I believe that Mr. Luo Nan possesses a type of talent. There is certainly a logic system within his brain that we are unable to comprehend. I have eliminated words like divinity, omniscience, and so on. This is because I have seen Mr. Luo Nan repeatedly make inconceivable judgments. He takes a long time to think and then verify things. He still retains the habits of thinking similar to humans, but his methods are very different. Right now, the yacht had slightly changed its direction, and the angle of the moonlight was slightly different. The virtual workspace automatically adjusted the brightness of the colors, forming a faint wave-like fluctuation. The speed of Yin Li's fingers was not affected. On the contrary, when it came to the current domain, the magical experiences of the past few days surged up in her mind, forcing her to not even think about words and forming sentences. She only wanted to pour out her thoughts. I have seen at least 2 different modes of thinking related to Mr. Luo Nan's thinking. The first one is the configuration of thinking that the order needs the most urgently. I believe that Mr. Luo Nan already possesses a highly mature system model in this domain. In his eyes, all material and mental structures, including the forms of actions of supernatural powers, can be classified as configuration problems. I have mentioned the complex relationship between snake tongue and the mutated camphor tree. I hope that my description won't cause you any trouble. In fact, the words I use to express myself are merely a clumsy description of the configuration diagram that Mr. Luo Nan drew. Yin Lu didn't bother to express anything here. She just inserted the 3D configuration diagram that Luo Nan had drawn 2 days ago in response to this problem as an attachment. The automatic layout effect was very dazzling. Even the plain text seemed to jump. The maze-like configuration diagram didn't show the image of a large tree or a beauty at all. It was more like the perspective diagram of some kind of complicated machine. According to Luo Nan, the diagram included the dynamic energy of Snake Tongue's body and the camphor tree that was several kilometers away. It also included the interaction of this model with the surrounding environment. They could be direct and orderly arranged. They could be disassembled and reassembled. They could be optimized according to a set of rules, forming a system that was even more closely related. These were all Luo Nan's explanations and demonstrations. Yin Lu could only accept and copy everything. After doing all this, Yin Lu quickly got rid of this domain that she wasn't good at. She began to talk about another matter that she was more concerned about. It was also a peculiar process that she was still pushing forward. As for the second type of thinking program, perhaps you have already seen some clues from the changes in Blood Soul Temple. In the past few days, the emotions of the residents of Bancheng have been very restless. The order even took the opportunity to develop a few shallow believers. These changes originated from Mr. Luo Nan. He is using a method similar to the dream entering technique to smear the dreams of the people of Bancheng. He calls this method creation. The following is a related work. Yin Lu inserted the second attachment. This was a psychic diagram that Luo Nan had created last night. The scene on the diagram was relatively abstract. From Yin Li's point of view, Luo Nan had drawn a stormy weather on the sea. The silhouette of a giant ship teetered on the crest of the waves. But the most eye-catching thing on the diagram was the 3 sets of dusky pillars of air. They were like 3 scattered sea tornadoes, occupying more than half of the space in the diagram. Luo Nan didn't deliberately hide his methods. He even took the initiative to invite Yin Lu to look at it. He said that she could interpret it from many angles. This was why Yin Lu dared to pass this psychic diagram to Lady Halder. She even added her own judgment. She didn't try to forcefully interpret the psychic diagram. Instead, she talked about her impression of Luo Nan as a whole. I feel that Mr. Luo Nan has a strange sense of dislocation. He clearly possesses inconceivable talent and ability. He also firmly believes in his own unique logic system. But he often unconsciously underestimates his own strength and the effects of his actions when making specific judgments. With Mr. Luo Nan's perception and judgment, this sort of dislocation shouldn't have occurred. Perhaps there is a problem with the frame of reference he chose. I believe that Mr. Luo Nan is currently facing enormous pressure. From what I've seen, he's abandoned all forms of entertainment in Bancheng. Aside from those thoughts that are hard to understand, he's engaged in high-intensity training between the 2 energy centers. He's extremely nervous. He's as taut as a bow. It's as if he's going to fight a life or death enemy at any moment. But the horned demons that have been running rampant these past few days simply don't have the qualifications to become his enemy. I'm unable to determine where his enemy is coming from, but the bottom line of my judgment is that it's an extraordinary level character. But what makes me very puzzled is that with Mr. Luo Nan's transcendent status in the Xia City branch, 1 or 2 extraordinaries aren't enough to give him such enormous pressure. Then I consider the secretive nature of Mr. Luo Nan's activities in Bancheng. So I have a guess. It's very likely that he wants to face an opponent that he can't reveal to outsiders. Considering the public nature of his conflict with Quantum Corporation and the Order of Justice, it's unlikely that the enemy comes from these 2 powers. Then it's very likely that the enemy comes from within the Ability User Association system. Of course, it's also possible that it involves some secret interests that can't be revealed to outsiders. This guess can explain the problem of the frame of reference. It can also partially explain the problem of the psychic diagram. This is because Mr. Luo Nan is only considering the extraordinary level. And this is very likely an opportunity that belongs exclusively to us. An opportunity to truly unify our standpoint with Mr. Luo Nan. Should I try to understand this aspect of information during my time in Bancheng? Should I make my stance more clear to Mr. Luo Nan? I'll leave it to you, boss, to decide. The letter could be considered to have come to an end at this point. There were still a few words that didn't convey the meaning of the letter. Yin Le had to correct them one by one at the end. She read through the letter once more, checking whether or not she had missed any key information. But the more she read, the more subtle the feeling became. She seemed to have made some sort of misplacement between the lines of the letter. It was in the aspect of standpoint. Yin Le was a bit absent-minded. And at this time, the speed of the yacht suddenly dropped significantly. It soon came to a stop. She furrowed her brows. She was just about to contact the head of the crew when a message came from the other side. A strong magnetic field has appeared in the surrounding area. The electronic equipment on the ship has been disturbed. It seems that cruising has arrived nearby. Is that so? Yin Le got up. Because she was looking down from a high vantage point, her field of vision was wide. Her gaze moved a bit, and she saw a strange bubble suddenly bubbling up on the surface of the lake in the distance. The surface of the lake began to ripple. Half a second later, under the illumination of the moonlight, a certain shadowy structure that was still very stubborn emerged from the surface of the lake. It floated up step by step. Yin Le didn't need to read the follow-up to know that it was a combat machine constructed from flesh and steel. The opponent's body soon completely emerged from the surface of the water. According to the data, the combined weight of flesh and steel should be over 300 kilograms. Its density was far greater than that of water. But this exoskeleton armor, as well as its controller, had never intended to rely on buoyancy. The tough body surpassed the rippling clear water and crushed through the nearly empty transparent air. It slowly rose between the lake and the sky illuminated by the bright moon. It floated in midair. Under the low-power stealth mode, the maglev and jets were always in a closed state. The gloomy multifunctional stealth coating swallowed and distorted the moonlight, making this combat machine appear like a malevolent and oppressive demon. But the surrounding air and lake water faintly resonated. It was as if it had turned into an exclusive choir, singing together in praise of majesty and holiness. Chapter 746. The 300-kilogram mixture of steel and flesh floated in the air for approximately 20 seconds before naturally turning around and landing on the top deck of the yacht. The top deck wasn't that big to begin with, but it was divided into the sunlight area and the driving area. The latter was very difficult to accommodate an exoskeleton armor, so Luo Nan naturally chose to land in the sunlight area. This squeezed Yin Le's space and gave her quite a bit of pressure. Yin Le didn't retreat. She trusted Luo Nan's control skills, so she needed to display this sense of trust. When the exoskeleton armor finally came to a stop, the protruding blades of the side arms were only a few dozen centimeters away from Li's face. The powerful electromagnetic field, the mutual interference forces of the mental and the material blended together. The sound of electric currents from the driving machinery and the fine grinding sounds of metal components formed a reverberation, pushing the surrounding air molecules to oscillate back and forth. It made her body feel numb as if she had been electrocuted. This was the truth. What followed was a wave of heat. The outermost layer of flesh and fascia of the exoskeleton armor was finally unable to withstand the repeated pressure of various forces. It was as if it had encountered a high temperature. It was scorched black, curled, and finally burned into ashes. Li had seen this sort of situation countless times over the past few days. She was already used to it. She didn't even blink. She stood quietly to the side, watching the components of the exoskeleton armor fall off Luo Nan's body one by one. They gradually returned to being neatly arranged components and were sealed into the metal box formed by the armor's outer shell. The lid of the box closed, but Luo Nan's body still hadn't truly touched the ground. The tips of his feet were suspended in the air, giving off a feeling of weightlessness. Instead, he bore the weight of an incorporeal and powerful force. He rejected the air, the night, and even all external objects, forming a domain of his own that didn't rely on external forces. Even though his floating weight had been reduced by over 200 kilograms, this method of purely relying on his body to resist Earth's gravity shook Li's mind even more than the previous scene of wearing armor. This was truly not relying on external objects. His fleshly body floated in the air. This was an extraordinary power that humans had always yearned for in their dreams since ancient times. Even though they had entered the era of distortion, this sort of ability was still rare. It was also the most eye-catching. Especially since Luo Nan didn't use any shortcuts or methods. Instead, he used his control of electromagnetic power to probe into the fundamental plane of the world. He used the most upright methods to form this legendary scene. Of course Luo was envious in her heart. She had also tried flying before, but it was through an out-of-body state. She couldn't understand the similarities and differences between the two, but it must be a wonderful experience. She didn't need to conceal her emotions. She just stood beside Luo Nan's floating body and let out a soft sigh of admiration, truly inconceivable strength. If I start learning electromagnetic configuration from now on, will I have the chance to replicate your ability in the future, sir? Of course, this is the most basic requirement. Luo Nan let out a long breath. The tips of his feet finally touched the deck, and the powerful electromagnetic field around him gradually subsided. With your relationship with the Blood Soul Temple, you already possess the basic strength of mental interference with matter. As long as I can grasp the basic electromagnetism configuration and learn some transformation techniques, I will definitely be able to fly in the air for a short period of time. As for combat applications, I am currently learning them. Clearly, someone had chosen the wrong frame of reference. Li didn't continue this topic. As a secretary, mentioning herself was actually a way to highlight the brilliance of the boss. It would be too stupid to declare that she wanted to become like the boss, even if she couldn't help but yearn for it. She changed the topic to Luo Nan's practice schedule. Today ended a bit early. Sir, do you have any other plans? Or do you want to rest early? There's news from Xia City. It's a good time for me to change my mind. News? The coordinates of Grandpa's laboratory are up for auction. Luo Nan was too lazy to form a sentence. He just said a few key words. He sat directly on a bench in the sunlit area and relaxed his body. There's finally some news from that side. I think they'll send me an invitation in the near future. Luo was even more cautious when dealing with such a sensitive topic. Have you already confirmed the auction house? Yes, the Toyama auction house. It's over at Bin City. Bin City? Luo nearly said, what a coincidence. But when she saw Luo Nan's unexpectedly relaxed expression, as well as Luo Nan's increasingly deep eyes, she swallowed back her words. She thought for a bit and said, the Toyama auction house has quite a lot of activities in the inner world. After all, the surroundings of the archipelago are rich in mutant species. A lot of special materials are auctioned there. I remember that their spring auction is about to begin. If it's in Bin City. It might not be in Bin City. Luo Nan faintly smiled. If we play a little bit and add some promotional activities, wouldn't we be able to pull more people onto the ship? Onto the ship. Yin-Lu subconsciously swept a glance at the yacht beneath her feet. She didn't understand Luo Nan's joke. Mister, if you want to raise funds, Luo Nan directly interrupted her, why would I need to spend money on my grandfather's things? I just want to see who in the world is the one paying for the sound. Yin-Lu was unable to grasp Luo Nan's emotions and thoughts. She could only say the most correct words, I'll listen to Mister's instructions in everything. Luo Nan nodded slightly and raised his eyelids. He saw that the lights were still on in the work area. Let alone the words on it, the graphics were very familiar. Report to Mrs. Halder. Yes. Mrs. Halder is very concerned about Mister's situation. Yin-Lu absolutely wouldn't call Mrs. Halder, boss, at a time like this. However, Luo Nan wasn't able to understand her meticulous thoughts. Luo Nan didn't have any clear interest in Yin-Li's manuscript. He raised his head and rested in the sunlit area, adjusting the state of his body and mind. Oh, the moonlight was shining down right now. Yin-Lu was certain that Luo Nan didn't care about the matter of the report, but she still didn't close the work area. She just gently walked to Luo Nan's side, bent her legs, and knelt on the bench with one knee. She massaged Luo Nan's shoulders to loosen his muscles. For work like massaging shoulders and massaging back, the most suitable position was naturally at the back. However, the top deck was an inch of gold. The position Luo Nan chose just so happened to be at the edge of the water. There really wasn't any suitable space at the back, so Yin-Lu could only use this awkward position. However, this made them appear more intimate, so Luo Nan didn't refuse. Luo Nan closed his eyes and enjoyed it for a moment, allowing his body, which was suffering from the penetrating effects of the electromagnetic field, to relax a bit. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze didn't immediately focus. Instead, he was dazed for 2 seconds before he focused on the most eye-catching virtual work area on the top deck. In the end, his gaze focused on the psychic diagram embedded within the words. This diagram was the work he was most proud of for some time. The most wonderful thing about it wasn't the information revealed, but the core logic that formed this diagram. Luo Nan had told Yin-Lu that there were multiple angles of reference and interpretation, but deep down in his heart, he always believed that the only person who could truly understand this psychic diagram was perhaps himself. This was because this was an intuitive diagram constructed upon the foundation of the developer mode of the mental world. It was also the first time Luo Nan didn't avoid a true enemy. He risked the danger of suffering a backlash from psychic communication to carry out a surveying and mapping survey. Luo Nan's initial clairvoyance on the mental plane was vastly different from the results he saw from other ability users. He didn't see the structure of 3 layers, 1 region, and 1 domain from the very beginning. Instead, he saw a deep multi-layered structure of curtains. Countless curtains fluttered and fluttered within the deep void. They were all independent, layer upon layer, and there was no end to them. However, under the influence of rules and power, several strands would occasionally twist and converge, forming either stable or loose nodes. The vast majority of them were only temporarily adhered together, quickly dispersing on their own. But there were also some that, once twisted together, formed into a dead knot. Brand new rules and laws were solidified, making it hard to separate. Basically, Luo Nan viewed the movements displayed by these curtains as the reflection of extraordinary power on this special plane. Every node that was twisted by the curtains was the result of the extraordinary power of an ability user. It was just like when people explored the abyssal region. Some people were powerful enough to leave behind permanent or semi-permanent solidified configurations in the abyssal region. Some people couldn't even persist for a few milliseconds. Of course, the developer mode of the mental world and the abyssal region couldn't be equated. The former was more like the bottom layer of an operating system. The layers involved were deeper and broader. It was more like the intuitive embodiment of some system rules. Luo Nan viewed this judgment very cautiously, but he would occasionally float. He gave himself the grand title of a man who gazed directly at the truth of the world. This was the first time that Luo Nan's version of the truth of the world was consciously replicated and placed into the psychic diagram. It was precisely because of the display of the information in developer mode that this psychic map showed 3 gigantic sea tornado elements that stood between the sea and the sky. These were 3 powerful extraordinary-level enemies that could directly influence the future. The first was naturally Gong Qi of the cloud world. The second was also very clear. It was Luo Yuan, who grasped the dimensional crossbow. As for the third, Luo Nan didn't have a definite target. Instead, he played creatively. He set the target to be the person who drew up the retreat plan and the power he represented. He didn't know if the other party was an extraordinary or not, but for a character like Luo Yuan to tacitly cooperate with him, his influence could be imagined. Whether it was in terms of ability or power, it was never wrong to look up to someone. These 3 powers formed the basic structure of the psychic diagram. But from the perspective of composition, the 3 sea tornadoes clearly occupied too much space, destroying the balance of the composition. This also hinted at the conflict between Luo Nan, the true creator, and the actual composition elements. Only after understanding all of this could Luo Nan look at the other elements. The enormous ship that was washed to the top of the waves was a key element that had continued from the beginning of this event. There was nothing much to say about it. What was truly interesting was the throbbing lightning formed by the contrast of light and dark between the layers of clouds, the waves, and the pillars of air. They embodied the tension of the storm in the painting. If one were to analyze it in depth, it would represent some sort of conflict, but it would also represent some sort of connection. Especially between the 2 pillars of air of Gong Qi and Luo Yuan, the lightning trajectories interweaved particularly tightly. Chapter 747. Luo Nan held a relatively cautious attitude toward the results of psychic communication with extraordinaries. In the past few months, Luo Nan, Mr. Bai, Gao Tianshi, and even Old Yu had discussed psychic techniques. The 3 seniors had pointed out very seriously that psychic techniques could provide foresight, but it was very likely that one would suffer a backlash. Whether it was in the legends of ancient times or on the plane of reality, psychics who forcefully peered into the secrets of heaven through psychic and divination techniques could basically write a book on the number of psychics who died from a backlash. This was especially true in the current era, where extraordinary powers were manifested. The levels and realms were clearly differentiated. Even though the ruler had its advantages and the CUN had its disadvantages, true experts had their internal logic and external environment integrated into one. They were natural sources of radiation. If one forcefully peeped into them, one would have to be prepared to die from the radiation. And it was very normal for the results of psychic communication to be distorted and interfered with when facing such targets. There were cases of people vomiting 3 liters of blood and receiving the wrong answer. There were even cases of people dying from anger. Whether it was Gong Qi or Luo Yuan, they were the strongest people in the world. No matter how low-key they were, the influence of their radiation covered the entire world. Especially Gong Qi. He was a powerful figure in the ability user society. His influence was even more astonishing. It was no surprise that he and Luo Yuan had intersected or that there was some unclear relationship of interest between them. Therefore, Luo Nan wouldn't come to a conclusion easily. The results of psychic communication needed to be verified. Plus, he wasn't directly probing the 2 dangerous targets. When using the psychic diagram, Luo Nan had intentionally overstepped the iron law of avoiding extraordinaries when using the psychic technique. He had taken the initiative to touch the domain of extraordinaries. But he did his utmost to avoid meeting force with force. He tried to use more skillful methods. He made more thorough preparations. He chose a more suitable and ingenious angle. He also found the most comfortable and smoothest starting position. Snake Tongue and Fan Lu. Neither of these two were extraordinaries, but one was Gong Qi's spirit behind his back. The other was Luo Yuan's driver. They formed a close and direct connection with the two extraordinaries, but it was also a blind spot in a certain sense. It looked like a trick, but it was actually the optimal solution obtained by combining all kinds of intelligence and information. Right now, Luo Nan had two different methods of dealing with Snake Tongue and Fan Lu. He used a method of close contact with Snake Tongue. However, he didn't have any hope that she could keep the secret. All he wanted was a channel of information that could influence Gong Qi's judgment. However, the current situation was so smooth that he was a little surprised. Let's leave it at that for now. As for Fan Lu, Luo Yuan's chauffeur, he was a perfect entry point. He had been following Luo Yuan for more than 10 years and was definitely a trusted aide. Even if his aptitude was mediocre and he was unwilling to undergo genetic modification, his status was neither high nor low. However, his understanding of Luo Yuan was far greater than anyone else's. Luo Nan dug up a lot of interesting information from Luo Nan's dream. And this was under circumstances where Luo Nan had clearly taken some mental defensive measures. Moreover, although Luo Nan used the psychic diagram as an effective method of gathering and analyzing intelligence, he wouldn't wholeheartedly rely on this method to conquer the world. Once the psychic map had a clear direction and center of gravity, the entire world's mental sensing network would be put to good use. Luo Yuan's senses were far too sharp. Luo Nan couldn't follow him all the time to avoid attracting attention. But Luo Nan didn't need to worry about anything here on Fan Road. Luo Nan temporarily set aside his cultivation. Aside from the news related to the auction, he also received more concrete feedback on the actual scene. Right now, it was early morning in Ban City. Inland, whose city was roughly 2 time zones away. Right now, it was midnight. Fan Lu, the target he was paying attention to, had already been waiting quietly at Hu City's airport for 3 hours. Finally, the transport plane from the wilderness had arrived. Fan Lu was involved in a large transaction, and it was a crucial link in the treat plan. Fan Lu personally handled all the procedures of receiving, inspecting, transferring, and so on. From the moment the transport plane arrived, Fan Lu and his attendant, Little Zhao, didn't have a moment of leisure. Separate the equipment and data. Okay. Are the appraisers from the Toyama auction house here yet? The transfer vehicle is waiting over there. Our people don't get involved. Let the people from the Toyama auction house handle it. This matter has nothing to do with us from the moment the equipment leaves the transport plane. Everything was busy but not messy. While the appraisers from Toyama were nervously inspecting the equipment and data, Fan Lu had already finished his work. He let out a long sigh and even had the leisure to lament, "I haven't seen these familiar old objects in 20 years. Speaking of which, I actually didn't notice them at all when they were placed in that place." Little Zhao went, but before he could respond, he was rudely pushed to the side. Fan Lu turned his head in horror, but he saw a fellow with a deformed head suddenly jump out. The fellow's long and narrow eyes stared straight at him. "Contact the next transport plane for me. I'll go with it." "What?" Chapter 748. The medium-sized transport plane flew through the night, advancing all the way inland, but in the end, it still couldn't outrun the sun that rose from the horizon. The transport plane that flew all the way from Hucheng finally arrived at the relevant airspace when the first light of dawn silently spread over thousands of miles of wasteland. From beginning to end, the cabin of the transport plane was empty. Everyone was in the cockpit. Of course, there were only 3 people on the entire plane: the pilot, co-pilot, and the centaur. As a bad customer who forced his way onto the plane, the centaur was self-aware and clearly showed his distrust of the 2 crew members. He was nailed in the cockpit until the transport plane arrived at the destination he hoped for. What was strange was that the cabin was empty along the way, and the cockpit was quiet. The centaur, who always had the talkative attribute, actually kept his mouth shut. If one didn't look back, one wouldn't be able to feel his existence. If silence could be accumulated, the transport plane would have crashed halfway due to severe overload. After finally reaching the target airspace, the centaur finally said, "Descend." The transport plane penetrated the clouds and continued to descend. Looking out from the porthole, the slightly undulating red soil of the wasteland below was already the kind that the centaur was familiar with. He looked at the instrument panel on the transport plane and converted the angle of the sun. The centaur was finally satisfied and patted the shoulders of the two pilots. "Very good, maintain this height. We will hover for a while. Pay attention to the mutants. It shouldn't be a problem for you." As the centaur said, at an altitude of about 6,000 to 7,000 meters, the population and number of flying mutants couldn't be underestimated. Hovering around was not a good choice. However, neither the pilot nor the co-pilot spoke. They just followed the centaur's instructions and began to hover at high altitude. They skillfully avoided several waves of flying mutants that passed by. This continued for about 20 minutes before the centaur finally stopped. "Very good, very agile." The pilot and co-pilot remained silent. As the products of the gene exchange, they were the most capable subordinates and executors. The centaur's praise was completely wrong. Of course, the centaur didn't care. After saying that, he left the cockpit and walked into the rear cabin. At the same time, he gestured for the cabin door to be opened. "I won't trouble you with the landing. Let's have a pleasant cooperation. See you next time." As the hatch opened, the cold and strong airflow from the high altitude went straight in. The centaur faced the whistling wind, closed his eyes, opened his arms, and jumped down without hesitation. Only his sharp whistle was left in the cabin. In the cockpit, a radar alarm sounded. The co-pilot could clearly see through the monitor screen that almost at the moment when the centaur jumped off the transport plane, a huge shadow swept past the bottom of the fuselage and converged with the centaur's figure, then it dived at high speed. The pilot and co-pilot looked at each other. Without saying anything, they flew the plane back. The centaur, who made a leap of faith from the transport plane, stood steadily on the back of a pterosaur. This high-altitude mutant, known for its ferocity, was uncomfortable with the sudden weight on its body, but it only slightly twisted its long neck and maintained a relatively stable posture. Then, it spiraled down. After just 3 minutes, the centaur truly set foot on the sun-covered wasteland, and the pterosaur, which was a temporary vehicle, flew back into the sky and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Deterred by the huge size of this high-altitude predator, dust and smoke rose from all directions in the wilderness. Some of the small animals that were swimming around in the surroundings fled in all directions. Some of them lost their normal rhythm and quickly became the breakfast of the strong. The food chain of survival of the fittest was simple and straightforward. It didn't require any brains at all, and it was most favored by the centaur. He looked around and glanced at this wilderness full of wildness and vitality. Of course, it was full of cruelty. He grinned and stood there with his arms crossed, waiting quietly. In just a few minutes, the pterosaur just now returned. From its broad shoulders, 3 figures jumped down one after another. One of them just landed on the ground, and he took the opportunity to punch directly into the rippling red ground. Half of his arm was deeply stuck in the ground. He then raised his hand, and his fingers had already pierced between the head and neck of a giant viper that was as thick as a human thigh. Red and green body fluids mixed together, flowing on the snake that had been caught but was still twitching violently. Then, the snake was thrown everywhere. Amidst the protests of the others, the snake catcher didn't say a word. He stuffed the fat viper together with his own arm into the long mouth of the pterosaur that landed next to him. The sharp teeth of the sharp-beaked pterodactyl habitually scraped the food, instantly turning the venomous snake into strips of meat. When the tip of the teeth scratched the snake catcher's arm, which was even thicker, it did not leave the slightest mark. After feeding, the snake catcher slapped the pterosaur's head, almost causing this top meat-eater that looked like the reincarnation of a dinosaur to fall down. So, the pterosaur soon flapped its wings and flew into the air again. In the blink of an eye, it flew high and disappeared. It felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from the completion of the mission, but it also felt as if it had fled far away. The snake catcher was undoubtedly the strongest among the group. The centaur probably only reached a position slightly below his chest. When the sharp-beaked Quetzalcoatlus was used as a vehicle, it probably put most of its strength on this person. It was only natural that it ate the food he fed. The centaur was quite afraid of this giant. It kept staring at him, and after confirming that the giant didn't say anything else after feeding, it turned its gaze to the other two. Apart from the giant, there was also a middle-aged man who was as thin as a monkey. As soon as he landed, he squatted by the side and fanned himself. His curled-up body felt like it was too small to fit on the giant's shoulder. His actions were extremely jumpy, which was really unworthy of his face that had been through the vicissitudes of life. He stuck out his tongue and shouted, "Hot, hot, hot." His face was red as if he had a heatstroke or taken drugs. The centaur was more familiar with this person, so he took the initiative to greet, "Monkey, how many did you drink today?" Monkey spat, 10 little blue balls. I was brought over by Fatty Dragon before I could get it. I can turn the earth upside down now." As he spoke, he glanced at the giant who created the shadow on the side, but he didn't continue. As for the last one, even in the wilderness, he was still wearing a suit as if he had just walked out of a business banquet. A bow tie, a watch, and a pair of shiny leather shoes. Everything about him made him look like a well-dressed person. At this time, the fastidious person looked down at his watch and frowned. "We are about 20 minutes later than the scheduled time. There's no time to chat now. Remember, we are here to receive the secret auction results. It has nothing to do with the centaur. That's why, you stubborn fatty dragon, you should have listened to me just now and released the germs separately. That way, everyone wouldn't have to trudge around on foot. You should know that every minute in the wilderness, the amount of viruses and germs we inhale is more than 200 times that of a big city. And this damn soil." With that said, the fastidious person turned around to leave, but before he could take a step, his shoulder was hooked by the centaur. The two men's faces were almost stuck together. The latter didn't care how disgusted the fastidious person looked and whispered in his ear, "I heard that your good friend, Brain Demon, died. It doesn't matter if he died, but where is Wu Jun or a family that can threaten me? This is your plan, right, flour sausage? Call Jingxin." Fastidious person Jingxin pushed the centaur away in annoyance. He even used his fingers to wipe off the dust on his shoulder. "There are always accidents in everything. We have been trying our best to find her these few days. We even caught 2 of the upper echelons of the small parish for questioning, but Wu Jun seems to have disappeared." "Then what about her child?" "Brain Demon did it personally, but I heard that he didn't even leave a complete corpse. This is an accident among accidents. We still don't know what kind of powerful enemy centaur encountered. We can only determine from the traces of the Fusang tree that this is a very powerful psychic. Even after Brain Demon used the Fusang tree system to exert his strength, he still crushed him to death like a bug. It's very likely to be a transcendent. If it's a hidden trump card of the Xielua parish, it will definitely be a very terrifying matter. I don't care who killed the Brain Demon or how he died. I only care about where Wu Jun and her child that you promised me are. That child should have left the Yu-Hole market. You have to know that the surrounding environment is too complicated, so we haven't found him yet." Alright, don't be angry. I admit that the conditions I promised you were greatly discounted. The parish will make up for the difference." Jingxin revealed a perfect and sincere smile. "You cannot trust me, but there's still Maho, Fatty Dragon, and the Amaterasu parish. After so many years, we should have established mutual trust, right?" Centaur stared at Jingxin without even blinking. Jingxin straightened his face and put on a more habitual serious expression. What the four of us need to do now is to squeeze out the value of that laboratory before the inexplicable treat plan is activated. This is a bet on the reputation of you, me, and the parish. We have also opened up a connection with the true upper echelons. The dark network auction went very smoothly. We just need to get the rest of the money now. Centaur chuckled. Now that the equipment and information have been dismantled and taken away, without Wu Jun, even if we can enter the door, there's no way to find the truly valuable things from those fragments. As long as she enters, it's victory. Centaur, my dear friend, you have to understand that Luo Yuandao's laboratory is just the entrance to a huge maze. I believe that in his years of research, there are indeed some techniques that can capture valuable fragments in the equipment he taught Wu Jun, but that is only a limited method to increase the probability. In essence, they are still trying their luck. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the power to protect themselves after 20 years. Jingxin was trying his best to brainwash Centaur with his glib tongue. Fat Dragon suddenly crossed his arms, signaling for the dangerous topic to stop for the time being. At the same time, he said in a deep voice. Chapter 749. 3,500 kilometers away from some inland wasteland, Ban City's time zone was pushed forward by 3 hours. When the first glimmer of dawn appeared over the wasteland, the sun was already high in the sky over Ban City. Today was Monday, the first working day after the weekend. Due to the barbell structure of the city, which was short from north to south and long from east to west, the many layers of traffic in the east and west of Ban City sunk into a busy and congested predicament. Temporary drainage channels were opened on North Mountain Lake. The military and police were mobilized on a large scale to suppress the mutant population on the lake, allowing for flying cars to shuttle through. The humming sound of engines resonated through the horizon. The tranquil and leisurely scenery of last night was nowhere to be seen. During this busy time, the 2 passengers on the yacht drifting on North Mountain Lake entered a working state. The sunlit area on the top deck was supposed to be a leisure area, but it had now become a temporary work area. Whether it was Luo Nan or Yin Lu, they were both immersed in writing and data. They were extremely busy. Luo Nan had been writing and drawing from the moment he entered this state. His brush moved like it was flying. He sketched one character after another and handed them over to Yin Lu for intelligence gathering and analysis. Actually, the technology of telepathic transcription had long since matured in this era. Luo Nan could completely use the relevant technology to reproduce the images of his mental clairvoyance into electronic information and search it directly. No matter how lifelike the sketches were, they were still separated by a layer. This kind of method affected Yin Li's efficiency quite a bit. It made her do a lot of extra work. However, the secretary had to accept the willful choice of the boss. Yin Li didn't have any thoughts of complaint in her heart. After all, this was a real-time image from several thousand kilometers away. Even though Yin Li knew that Luo Nan possessed the ability to mentally travel 10,000 kilometers, it was still hard for her mind to not be shaken when she truly experienced it from a different angle. It was still the same saying. Omnipresent. It was practically omniscient. It was omnipotent. Plus, Yin Li knew that Luo Nan's sketching technique was related to his clairvoyance and analysis of his targets. It contained deeper details. Therefore, she didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. She just earnestly sorted out the images Luo Nan drew and organized them. At the same time, she mobilized the Blood Flame Order's accumulated database over the years to distinguish, analyze, and determine the nature of these characters. She promptly reported them. The one in the jeep, Kevin Gardner, a self-proclaimed ranger with a B-rank fleshly body. Aside from close combat, he was proficient in all sorts of military equipment, including all sorts of exoskeleton armors. It wouldn't be surprising if he could drive the Deep Blue Walker. We always suspected that he had a military background, but even when we were at our best with the military, we couldn't find any concrete evidence. The person controlling the glider to descend is nicknamed Hua Dian. He's a very famous spirit energy detective in the industry, and he can basically be confirmed to be a spirit medium. Usually, he would only take money, but this time, his motive was quite suspicious. This barefoot ascetic priest should be Anthony. Although he did not appear in the mainstream circles of the inner plane, he had always taken it upon himself to spread the gospel. His prestige in the world of religions was high, and some parishes even hoped to confer him the title of saint, making him the main guardian saint of the extraordinary domain. It was said that he had been searching for the holy relic, hoping to find the traces of holiness in the changes of the new era. There are many believers of traditional religions who hold this belief and have even formed a secret organization. Anthony is likely to be one of them. Ian felt more and more baffled after finding the information of the three participants. The backgrounds of these three people are quite complicated. Aren't the horned demons looking for trouble by asking them to come? They're not complicated, and they can't. They don't have the guts to participate in the dark network auction of the horned demons. Luo Nan responded without thinking. His mental sensing network continued to capture the target and focus. He didn't just give the target a quick sketch during this process. Instead, he started from various angles, referring to the information Ian provided, and even starting from the feeling of a split second. He sought to capture the fundamental characteristics of the target. Not only did this fill the living starry sky with material, but it also served as preparation for the future drawing of the psychic diagram. They weren't the only ones. Although they had different standpoints and positions, the horned demons were doing similar work 3,000 kilometers away. They relied on Fatty Dragon's special ability to control the surrounding mutants. This ability appeared to be quite common. Luo Nan had personally witnessed the deaths of 2 ability users of this type. Puppeteer had died to the Devil Ray's bite, and Brain Demon had died even more miserably. They were all like this. Even Luo Nan himself had this type of ability in a certain sense. However, Fatty Dragon, this big guy, appeared to be much calmer than the other 2 who had died. His consciousness seemed to be able to jump back and forth between multiple mutants at any time. It was a bit like when Luo Nan's soul was in an out-of-body state. Mr. Bai had once misinterpreted it as the attached soul state. He could switch back and forth quite freely, seeming to be able to jump back and forth within a radius of 100 kilometers. Even with the restriction of needing a life vessel, Fatty Dragon's monitoring range was the widest that Luo Nan had ever seen, aside from himself and a few other mental extraordinaries. Anyone would think that Fatty Dragon was of the fleshly side just by looking at his build, but his attainments in the mental side were quite deep. Luo Nan took the information provided by Ian Lu and sized it up seriously. Ian Lu explained in a soft voice to the side, providing some unclear details of the information. Fatty Dragon is the backbone of the Amaterasu order. He is also one of the high-end thugs. He was mentally retarded in his early years, but the true god of the Amaterasu order personally enlightened him and unlocked his innate talent. Since then, he has been out of control. In a short 6 or 7 years, he has already stably occupied the top 200 of the various inner world rankings, and he is still rising. In terms of combat strength alone, some people call him the Eye of Truth Fairchild of the Order of Justice and the Secret Wheel of Life Master Fan of the Eye of Secret Contract. They are known as the 3 heroes of the secret order. And these 3 seem to be drifting away from the core decision-making circle for various reasons. In any case, Fatty Dragon's existence has clearly raised the level of this transaction. Luo Nan nodded. So this person needs to maintain a distance from the horned demon. Otherwise, the other participants will certainly have misgivings. Ian Lu also agreed with this judgment. She then said, as for the other 2, Monkey Horse was born in the wilderness. He is lecherous and bloodthirsty. He is a notorious savage among the vagabonds. He is also a frequent guest on the official wanted list. I don't know when he joined the Amaterasu order. This time, he probably needs to conceal his identity and give others a surprise attack. As for that Jingxin, it's quite strange for him to have a relationship with the Amaterasu order. His official identity is a wilderness ecology expert at Hood's Wilderness Laboratory. At the same time, he is also a member of the Ability User Society. He also has a professional technical position at headquarters. I'm afraid that Abner's expression won't look too good when this news gets out. Abner was the president of the Ability User Society headquarters. He was nominally the representative and leader of the entire world's ability users. Luo Nan had already seen him a few times from afar through the mental sensing network. He could more or less imagine what that person's expression would look like when he said that. He grinned and then furrowed his brows. The Amaterasu order has pulled out many hidden strings. They are completely determined to win this transaction. If they have this kind of determination, they can just take out the money to bid for the bid. They can also directly cooperate with the dark hand behind the scenes. With the horned demon in the middle, they should know each other's background. Yin Luo was unable to answer this question. Luo Nan didn't expect to obtain an answer. He quickly raised another question. How can anyone get involved in the Amaterasu order? Let's not talk about the horned demon. Fatty Dragon's background is simple, but Jingxin is a member of the society with a high position. Brain Demon and Horse Monkey are vagrants of the wilderness. The doctrine of education without discrimination, Tianqi True's soul, is just a random patchwork. There's nothing special about it. Snake Tongue's myriad spirit order can be modified and used without a single flaw. Luo Nan had more or less experienced the atmosphere of the Amaterasu Order's headquarters these past few days in Ban City. The management was really quite loose. Large and small overground and underground orders were allowed to grow in Ban City, the core region of the order. For example, Zhuo Wei, a mutant that clearly possessed basic intelligence and had already become the core of a small order, lived next to the residential area and allowed them to do as they pleased. It looked quite impressive, but in Spring City, they had to obtain the holy cloak of the Xia Luo order as soon as possible. They didn't even hesitate to dig up the foundation of the order. Luo Nan still wasn't clear on what kind of logic they followed. Because Luo Nan was racking his brains for the Amaterasu order, the members of the Amaterasu order fell into a rather headache-inducing situation as more and more people appeared to participate in the transaction. Aside from Anthony, Hua Dian, and Gardner, there were other people approaching from different directions and distances. With so many people, it was hard to avoid some bumping and bumping. F***ck me. Black Mist. That bastard who likes to put curses on people. Back in the wilderness, that fellow tormented me until I peed my pants. The horse monkey was thick-skinned. He spoke of his family's embarrassing past like a fart, but the hatred in his words caused the vast, sunny wasteland to seem a bit gloomy. He appeared in a spiritual body state. Jingxin grasped the main point. This fellow is clearly overconfident. You must know that there are 10 people participating in the transaction, including us, right? The horned demon nodded in confirmation. Jingxin continued, most of the 10 people should be on the mental side. They are scheming against the unsuspecting. All of them have the ability to deal with him. It's all too easy for a monkey to take revenge. Jingxin consciously assumed the position of the brains of this four-man group. He pacified Horse Monkey and reminded his companions of a more critical issue. Pay attention to the motorcycle rider that's following Gardner. I can't see his face clearly right now, but I remember the dagger behind his waist. Cui Qinghe, a swordsman from Ji City. He's proficient in close combat assassination. However, he has another identity. He's an Ablatum Knight. Li Taisheng, the secret covenant first Ablatum of the Order of Justice, came to Chan City to negotiate. This person was one of the attendants. Before the horned demon and the others could digest this, they heard another question. Who is this person? The one who spoke was Fatty Dragon. He rarely asked a question. At the same time, he used a secret technique to share the image he sensed with his companions. This backpacker. Is he part of the transaction? At nearly the same time, Luo Nan, who was over 3,000 kilometers away, locked onto the last person. The instant the focus was completed, Luo Nan's pen tip froze. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.